This is LongJohn once again with the party line. We're around from midnight to 5:30, 6 mornings during the week. And Hans Depp and Sanderson and Marcia Jessica are now removing their coats. What do you expect, a battle this morning, then?
Well, if we don't get one, what are we here for?
Well, we're going to be talking this morning with 4 or 5 different people. Hans Depp and Sanderson is the editorial director of Fantastic Universe. We were talking about that publication the other morning because in the current edition, the August edition of Fantastic Universe, there are 2 very important articles for people who are interested in the flying saucer phenomenon. The first article is UFO, Friend or Foe, written by Ivan T. Sanderson, and Mr. Sanderson has been a guest of the party line. The other article is written by Rector Gell-Rey, entitled The Flying Saucer Myth. Both of these articles are certainly worthwhile reading because you get the opinions of 2 well-known men in the field. Definitely, Lester Del-Rey does not buy the flying saucer story. Mr. Sanderson, well, he has an opinion, and I think that you should read the August edition of Fantastic Universe. It's available on your newsstands. This is not a commercial, but I know so many of you people are interested in the stories about flying saucers that you'll want to read this copy. Dated August, Fantastic Universe, and Hans Depp and Sanderson, one of my guests this evening, is the editorial director of that publication. Marcia Jessica is with us, the author of the new book about flying saucers, The Expanding Case for the UFO. We'll also have Dan Fry with us and George Van Tassel. Mr. Fry is the gentleman that claims that he took a trip in a flying saucer from a desert spot on the White Sands Proving Ground in New Mexico, took the trip in the flying saucer from that point to the city of New York and back in a period of 32 minutes. That's pretty fast. According to Mr. Fry, he doesn't feel that that's too fast. He feels that that can be accomplished by many people. And I understand this evening that they gave a lecture at the Diplomat Hotel. I stopped in for around 3 or 4 minutes, and I must say that there were quite a few people there. Is that right, George?
Well, John, the place probably could have held another 50 if they'd stood them up.
I don't know where. Possibly in the lobby downstairs.
Well, there was a balcony upstairs. Still had a little standing room.
Still had a little...
Yeah.
Oh, you're greedy. You're greedy, believe me.
I thought we were going to have a riot when LongJohn didn't show up. Apparently about 2/3 of the people there came about as much to see LongJohn as I did to see you, Van.
Well, very likely, because the show of hands in the audience, when we asked them how many were there due to this broadcast, I would say 50%.
No, 50 or maybe even 2/3. There was an awful lot of hands.
But when the court announced that LongJohn had been there and then left, well, they tore the place.
They certainly did. The applause shook the place certainly through.
Yeah.
I wondered why there were police cars near the well, that was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
Well, now that we've gone along with the jokes for the evening, then.
This isn't a joke,
John. This isn't a joke.
You just don't realize how well you're liked.
That's right.
Well,
That
that's
crowd
nice
wanted
to know.
LongJohn.
You know, the way you say that can be taken 2 ways. That's
Yeah,
not
I know.
what LongJohn.
You take it either way, friend. You just take it either way.
If you read some of my mail, you'll find that there are some people that want me too.
I guess that's right. I get that kind of mail, too.
Well, how do you think the audience received the 2 stories tonight? Your story, George, and Dan Fry's.
Well, the same way they always receive it, with a knowing and an understanding of a simple subject explained simply.
You mean flying saucers
That's
are
right.
considered a simple subject?
Simple to the extent that if the science of their operation is known, it's much more simple and less complex than any mechanism we have. Well, I think you're aware of the fact that I have talked to possibly 15 or 20 different people who profess to have a knowledge of the subject of flying saucers, and I possibly have spent some 100 hours on the subject, and I must admit that I still don't know how they operate or why they're coming here, and I'm still a little confused.
Well, John, your groove is this particular program, and you're doing an awful good job with it, and maybe you're not supposed to know.
I see. Why then?
We can't all do the same thing.
Anything else new?
No, you see, their basic science of religion and science and culture, social things, are all established on the same principle.
Now, when you say they, you're referring to people who are living on other planets.
On other planets or in space, completely free from planets.
Or living in space.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of them do.
Indeed, John, the word they in flying saucer parlance is spelled with a capital T, and it's practically a technical word. When anybody in flying saucer fan or somebody who's been contacted uses the word they, if you notice, usually a special emphasis on the word.
Well, there's another phrase, too, that's used on the program by many of the people who feel that they have some knowledge of flying saucers, and the phrase is the people.
Or these people.
These people. Or these people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. It's practically a proper name and spelled with the capital letter.
So if I say that a group of people, they went to the palace tonight, would that mean they're from outer space?
If you're talking to saucer fans, it might say a little.
Well, I'm learning.
Well,
good. Hans, what do you think about the flying saucers?
well, yes, interesting. By the way, I'm Hans Sanderson.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I thought that you knew George
Fantastic
Fantastic.
Universe. And the famous nonviolent witness at the discussion some time back, that affected you. I was struck by what you said just now, because I don't know if you've seen our current issue.
You aren't going to plug that thing again.
Current issue of a magazine which will be nameless. Please, Mr. Jessica. I want you to write an article for us, so...
I'm still debating that.
In that, Ivan Sanderson, in his article in this unnamed magazine, refers to a possible alternative about the UFOs. This is something that the Air Force has once considered, though it seems finally to have abandoned the idea. It is simply that some UFOs may themselves be alive. This is to say, they may be a life form equivalent to, but not specifically, either animal, vegetable, or virus that may dwell in the upper atmosphere of this or all planets, or live in space itself. When you were talking, therefore, about they, were you therefore talking about suggesting that
no, I wasn't
they may have been these life forms that Ivan was referring to in this article?
No, I wasn't. But I have a particular contact that I have never discussed publicly, either in lectures or over the air, in which these particular people are not like us. However, they have many advantages over us. For one thing, they don't have to walk around like we do. They move by an act that we call levitation, and they don't have to turn when they go anywhere because of the shape. They're shaped like a electric light bulb. In fact, in the comic strip, they were once called a shmoo. The only difference is that they have 32 eyes and a ring completely around their head, and they don't have to turn to look either. They can see in all directions.
Are you talking about people who come from another planet?
I'm talking about intelligent beings. Other than us. Other than us. I don't really know whether we can class that with them or not. But nevertheless, these beings live in space. They are not subject to temperatures. They feel heat and cold and touch them. They said that they have a field around their individual body that is sufficiently strong to repel or ward off any of our 30 caliber machine gun bullets, and that they can move in and out of their ships because they don't breathe air like we do, and they can move around in space. They don't require to breathe, and they don't have any legs. The simple reason that they levitate at all times.
You say that you spoke
Yeah, I spoke directly with these people.
to these people? What language?
Well, in cross communication, John, there's only one language. It isn't a language of English or Chinese or whatever it may be. A thought is what it is. It can't be anything else.
Did you see them?
Indirectly, yes. In a beam they projected, I saw them.
Was this at Giant Rock Airport?
Yes, this is a giant rock.
Underneath the rock?
Underneath
In the room
rock.
there?
Underneath the rock.
Hans?
I'm glad Hans brought that up because in all the research I've done covering literature for thousands of years, this sort of thing crops up continually. There are always, if you read a few hours in almost any class of literature, you will come to references which cannot possibly be anything but beings of non-human form. Discarnate intelligences or uncarnate intelligences, and we have to be careful with the word carnate because even that has become a technical term in some fields of research. But I'm very glad to have that subject brought up and get a little clarification on it. There's more than one kind of UFO, and as Dan pointed out, or Fry last night mentioned, the use of the word flying saucer is extremely unfortunate because there are many different types of entity or structure in space and in the sky that just classifying them as it may detect at certain times. That's right, Dan?
UFO isn't even a proper title because they aren't unidentified. Even the Air Force has used UFO as unidentified flying objects, and yet they know what they are. So they're really identified flying objects.
They do?
Oh, definitely. They've got at least 60 ships that they have with reports found due to mechanical failures, and at least 6 that we know of. One time they were right out of the field, and now I believe they're all under private research in various companies around the country.
Mm-hmm. What happened to the pilot or intelligence is piloting the
Well, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know except the one that Frank Scully wrote about. The bodies were taken from it. They were all dead in the ship or outside of it.
Well, hasn't there been a suggestion or a rumor around, rather, that the Scully story has been proven to be a hoax?
No, it has never been proven to be a hoax, and neither has the data which Truth printed about Cy Newton. I know Cy Newton personally, and I know Frank Scully personally. And the individual who was a freelance writer who wrote those articles was not speaking for True Magazine. He was speaking for himself, and he had a personal grudge that he was taking out because in his first effort to contact Scully and Newton on the subject, Newton knew that he was trying to get a hold of some of this material which Newton had. And so he pestered Cy, so finally Cy slipped him some phony, it wasn't phony, it was just aluminum stuff, which this man eventually found out was strictly earthly aircraft material, and of course he brought it out that Cy had perpetuated a hoax that this wasn't material from the ship. Well, Cy knew what the guy was trying to do all along, and so he just helped him along by giving him the stuff.
Not as you apparently did on a more recent occasion.
Well, I didn't give out any material that I know of.
Well, in the sense that you also I think you know they told him to.
Oh well.
Pardon me. Let me interrupt a moment. That Mr. Santeson was on the program that morning. That Jules St. Germain was here when he told us about the show. Well, I didn't know if you were aware of the fact that Mr. Sanderson was on the program that morning.
Well, before we get into the discussion of the morning, here's a message from one of our sponsors out in Newark. We're talking this morning with J.M. Fry and George Van Tassel. Hans Depp and Sanderson, the editorial director of Fantastic Universe, is with us. And just to remind you again, in the August edition, that's the current edition that's on your newsstand, there are two startling articles about flying saucers. One written by Ivan T. Sanderson, entitled UFO, Friend or Foe. The other written by Rector Gell-Rey, The Flying Saucer Myth. We also have with us the author of many books on the subject of flying saucers, Morris K. Jessup, whose most recent book, The Expanding Case for the UFOs, published by Citadel Press. Dan Fry, I know that you possibly have read some of the articles that have appeared in the various magazines, such as Fantastic Universe and other publications. How do you feel about these articles that have appeared about flying saucers?
Well, I have never had any criticism, John, about the opinion of the authors of these articles, because it's everyone's right to have their own opinion on any subject, and it is also their right to express that opinion within reason at any time and any place. The only criticism I would have of most of the articles that have appeared is that the individual who has written these articles, in most cases, has apparently spent almost no time or effort in determining the facts concerning the things about which he writes. I don't mean the factuality or non-factuality of the subject itself, but the little details of the individuals who are described. There have been articles in which I have been mentioned, and Dan have been mentioned, and others who have had experience have been mentioned, in which our names were incorrectly spelled, our ages were incorrectly given, our experiences were mixed up and joined up, and there are articles in which almost nothing stated in there as fact is actually fact.
In other words, you feel that they didn't do an adequate amount of research prior to writing the article.
As far as the facts that could be determined readily, yes.
Mm-hmm. You're referring mostly to articles of what you might call a negative nature, and the whole idea of UFO and saucers.
Yeah.
Well, do you think that there's anybody who could be considered to be a qualified expert on the subject of flying saucers?
Well, it would be merely a question of the definition of the term. What is an expert and what is a qualification? I think that anyone who wished to write an article on the subject could readily obtain the facts, that is, the correct spelling of an individual's name, his correct age, his place of residence, and things like this, which are readily obtainable. And if these are put in correctly, then the individual is welcome to have any opinion on the subject which he chooses.
Well, how about the stories? Forgetting about the fact that possibly they have misspelled a name or possibly misquoted an age. Do you think that they've been fair in their opinion of the people who claim that they have had physical contact with people from other planets?
Well, I don't see how in many of these cases, how the opinions could be fair or otherwise, because they simply have no basis on which to formulate an opinion. I have read a number of stories. One was in the Men's Magazine a year and a half ago, which began with a sneer at the credulity of people who would believe in this sort of thing, who would, as it was put, accept data without proof. The author then went on to give quite a long article in which there wasn't one single true statement. There wasn't one single statement of fact.
Do you remember some of the untrue statements?
Yes, I remember some of it well. Let's put it this way. The article started out with a quotation of what I had said in a talk at the Postback Convention. I had made no such statement. I had not even approached that particular subject in any way. The article began by describing this middle-aged rocket technician, Dan Fry, which is perfectly all right. I have no objection to people
describing me as middle-aged. But the interesting thing was that in the next paragraph, this individual referred to Truman Betham as the young road mechanic, who happens to Truman Betham is 10 years older than I am. And this merely proved beyond all doubt that this writer of this article had never met either myself or Mr. Betham, nor had he ever met anyone who had met either.
Is he a road mechanic?
He is a road mechanic.
Well, do you think the difference in the age, the misquoting of the age, is of great importance to the story itself?
Well, it is an evidence that the individual who wrote it had no basis for making a determination or an opinion on one way or the other. Mm-hmm. He hadn't investigated the subject enough to be able to formulate an opinion.
Maybe he's judging by a picture on the back of the jacket. You know, doesn't look rather young on the in the book.
The entire article was written in a vein of ridicule to begin with. I remember the article, and I was described as a high school graduate, which was again an error, and numerous things. I mean, it was so obvious that every sentence had an error in it of some kind. Due to the fact the man had never contacted any of the people I talked with, the ones he was writing about. He evidently sat at his desk and dreamed all this up, and in the flying saucer game, why, of course, he would have been declared immediately as someone having hallucinations. But in the writing game, why, it was accepted because they can push things around so badly anyway that it's normally accepted that way.
Have you read any of the articles that have appeared in the monthly publication that is published by CSI, Civilian Saucer Intelligence?
I don't know whether I've read any of these recent ones.
They make it a point not to send those bulletins to us, I guess, John, because they're anti-contact, I understand, and they don't believe anybody's had any contact, and so the people that have had contact don't get their literacy.
The most interesting thing about the thing that amuses me concerning these articles is that the writer almost always starts out as saying that it's merely at the credulity of these people who accept testimony without having proof, and then the individual proceeds to write an article that has not a word of truth in it, and expects his readers to swallow it whole without any proof. This is always amusing when you see this done.
Well, as an editor, pardon me, just one moment, Warren. Go ahead. As an editor, Hans, how do you feel about that?
Work didn't mean much of the expression on his face.
When I say change, I say this because, frankly, I'm rather sorry that you had such unpleasant experiences. I know that at least at Fantastic Universe, we have made every effort to be as accurate and as objective in our report as possible. For example, I'm sure you won't find anything wrong with the description of Truman Betham as a journeyman engineer and a welder, which is based on his own book. And similarly, in other material, when we have had on occasion and some reason to mention anyone, we've always gone directly to sources.
Oh, we've got
the people.
But
as far as CSI, well, this, in theory, we were not doing the science fiction article when we had an article on this contact cases and on people who claim to have had these experiences. I mean, this is the article I'm referring to, so I wasn't aware that it was science fiction. But, you see, we said at CSI, and I'm not saying this in a very cynical disagreement with you, attempt, at least, to be rather objective, and I'm quite sure that your mistake, or that you're mistaken, and that you misunderstand.
Well,
we were to send you a bulletin.
We were referring only to certain particular stories which were written, which we know were never researched because no one had ever contacted us or anyone that we knew of to get the information to us.
Let me give you an illustration of how I could sample this. I don't deny that I am mildly skeptical of the world. As I have said before, I traveled by not only by both of you, but by some others who have appeared on John's program. But on the other hand, I will tell you exactly the same thing I told Howard Hinton. Show me. And if you show me, I'll go as far along the way I can possibly send you to. But until you show me, or until you can document, not in the way that has been done up to now, but in a way that as a research project,
I can personally at least half of that, I would be willing to go along with it. In the meantime, I am forced as an editor responsible to my readers to rely on existing sources of material. In our case, it happens to be the organization you refer to as CSI, the Civilian Counterintelligence, whom I have found to be very sincere, very thorough, very analytical in their source, and granted, a little critical at times of things which they feel are exaggerations, but they attempt to document any cases.
Well, their attempts to document the contact certainly went done, because nobody from CFI ever contacted me and ever asked any questions at all, and yet they definitely state and have stated that they figure all contact is strictly hoax.
Article is, I think it was in December 15th issue of the bulletin, wasn't it? They had devoted about a page and a half.
Yes, they did.
They had about a page and a half. And because I am expected to be here tonight, by the way, and so that's why I didn't bring any ammunition with me. I thought I could have brought it. I brought it along and posted fantastic material.
I read one article in which they wrote up me in particular, and it talked about my hallucinations and so forth, and yet none of them had ever contacted me to even find out what I was like or what my experience was directly or anything else.
Hallucinations? I don't remember.
Well, it wasn't just that word, but I don't know what word they did use, but it was strictly a detrimental article in its entirety. It was implying that I just was a pipe dreamer or something like that. The entire article is based on that. And
well,
I don't know how they consider it to be investigators or intelligent when they write an article about a man they never talked to and know all about him.
I think gathered from at least the Oscar and the Defender so that some of their people have talked to him.
No. I would like to just add this into the conversation. I happen to know Ted Blocher personally, and a couple of the other members of CSI. And I've enjoyed having them on the program, but I've taken issue with them on the Howard Mendes case. Now, I can understand that they have a limited amount of money. They have to budget themselves, and I would say that it would be difficult to go all the way out to California to visit George Van Tassel or to visit the Sam Tsai. But I felt that at least they should have investigated the Howard Mendes story. And I don't think that they did that. Now, they may take issue with this statement.
I think they may.
Well, they criticize it.
Well, at least, John, they're always the U.S. mail. They didn't talk much about the first side to opinion on something that you don't write about it. Well, that's very true.
Yeah. I'm a little inclined to take similar views to Hans on the being at least mildly skeptical in some of these cases, but that we have to distinguish between two types of what you might call negative articles. The thing that Dan Fry started out talking about a while ago is an article written by what you might call a professional debunker. A debunker has to debunk or he hasn't got any occupation. And if he keeps it up, he does run into the situation where he doesn't have legitimate or at least accurate information to do it with. Now, I don't think the CSI does. Quite the same category as professional debunkers. I think the biggest trouble is Lex Nebel and Ted Blocher, both of whom I know and consider very good friends. The basic trouble with them is simply youthful enthusiasm. They get off on one of these things and write it a little harder than they are justified in doing on the basis, as Dan points out, of the practical knowledge they have in hand. There are times when I'm inclined to agree with them, but I'm not going to make the radical statements. In any case, it's my privilege to agree or not to agree, but it's my privilege to make unwarranted and unfounded statements.
So, as I pointed out, I have no objection whatever to any conclusion
that anyone arrives at, provided that that conclusion is based on a reasonable amount of research to begin with, or investigation. As you say, there are some people who are called professional scoffers who make a living by sneering at things that they know nothing about. It doesn't matter whether they know anything about them or not, because their only good job is to sneer. And
there's another thing that hasn't occurred to a lot of people in regard to contact stories. That is that these stories can be proved, but they cannot be disproved. When a man says he saw something, he cannot possibly prove that he didn't do it, as he may be in a position to prove that he did. And if you weren't there at the time, it's a little dangerous to say that it is definitely untrue.
Well, have you ever met anybody, Morris Jessup, that they claim that they've had a physical contact or a number of physical contacts with people from other planets and that they've been able to offer you any proof?
I don't think anybody has ever offered me anything that I could call proof. Of course, I haven't made any serious attempts to find the proof either.
Well, you've talked with a lot of these people,
I've
Morris.
talked to just a few, three or four. And
you've talked to Howard.
I
know on this program. You've talked to Dan. You've talked to George Van Tassel.
And one or two other people. Frankly, I haven't yet been confronted with anything like I consider ironclad proof. But circumstantial evidence.
Have you had any proof?
I've had no proof except an overwhelming mass of personal reports, or what you might call eyewitness evidence. And you either accept it or you call people liars outright. You almost have to do one or the other if you express an opinion. And so far, I haven't felt that I was qualified to express a definite opinion one way or the other. I am not convinced of the accuracy of statements. I don't question anybody who has good intention or integrity in this matter. I do question the accuracy of a good deal as I have been told. But I have no proof negatively or positively, and I certainly am not going out on the limb as, perhaps CSI does, in stating flatly that what somebody says he did is not true. I can prove it, and I'm not going to make myself liable to.
Well, I think we ought to look into this term proof a little bit. We hear this word used a lot. John, what would you consider proof?
Why did you put me on the spot? You must have been listening to some of the programs, because I brought this point up myself. What would be proof? In other words, if you brought me a publication here and you told me that this was a magazine that's printed on the planet Mars, I don't know what I could say about it. I'd have to say once again, well, I don't buy it. If you brought me a piece of metal, if you brought me a piece of fabric or anything, very frankly, this would not prove anything to me. I'll have to admit that to you. I would say that proof would be to me, just talking off the cuff, I would say that possibly actually seeing a saucer land, not having somebody point up in the sky and say, do you see that? And possibly I do see something up there, and I don't know what it is. And whoever's pointing it out to me would say, well, John, that's a saucer. Well, this would be difficult for me to buy. Another bit of proof would be possibly to witness some of these telepathic communications. Also, I was going to say, meeting some of the people, this wouldn't prove anything to me either, because we've been told by Howard Menger that they look like Earth people, so what would I know?
Right there, I would like to know how you would witness a telepathic communication. If you can explain that one to me, we might be well on the way.
Yes, I can. I have been told by some people on the program, who will remain nameless at the present time because we will not discuss them, that they can be sitting in their home, in the room in their home, and when they do receive a telepathic communication, it is audible to other people sitting in the room. So if that is so, why can't I hear it?
In other words, John, you mean if you heard it, then this would be proof. To me.
I agree with you that it wouldn't be proof to possibly many people who may listen to the program. It would be proof of at least a message. However, I also do know, because I have a little knowledge of magic and a little knowledge of pseudo-mind reading, that I would be able to do this for you. But if I witness this phenomena, then in turn I would like to investigate the room.
But John, one thing is this. Assuming that you, let us say right now, hear such a message, what proof do you have of the extraterrestrial origin of that message?
That is very true. I would say this, that if I had the opportunity to investigate, to look over the house, the room, wherever I may be, and if I didn't find any mechanical or electronic equipment there, then I would be led to believe that something is happening that I cannot understand. So therefore, I would say, well, possibly this may be one of these telepathic communications. And when I say that, I don't mean to infer that I'm a genius when it comes to magic or pseudo-mind reading. I am not. But I have a little more knowledge than, let's say, the average fellow on the street.
When you say it may be, you certainly are not claiming it's proof.
No. That's right. It boils down to the fact that all of this material is evidence. There is no such thing as absolute proof. I guess you want to carry this to its logical conclusion, you can show that there is no such thing as absolute proof of anything.
Well, would you consider, John, in 1952, I notified the airport that the saucers were going to buzz Washington before they buzzed it by registered airmail letter with a return receipt which they signed. And the event happened exactly as I told them it was going to happen. They were buzzed in Washington. The radar
told us that the other morning.
Have shown that and so forth, and many witnesses can testify.
May I just say this to answer that question? And I'm not trying to imply that I don't have confidence in you as an individual, as being an honest, sincere person. The fact that you have a receipt from a registered letter that proves that they did receive a registered letter in the Pentagon or the President, whoever you addressed it to, does not necessarily prove to me the content of that letter. You may have sent a birthday card saying, "Happy birthday, President."
You know, I foresaw a guy like you coming along. So I also sent a copy. No, I just foresaw a character like you in the future. So I also sent a exact copy of the same information to the Los Angeles Examiner and the Life magazine at the same time. They also received copies of that letter.
Have they ever acknowledged that letter?
Not other than signing a return receipt.
Well, now, at this point, I must say, if this is true, and I have no reason to doubt it, it would seem to me that life was a little lax, and also the Hearst paper out in Los Angeles was a little lax in not following this up. I think that this should make front-page headlines.
Yeah, but you see, when something says suppress, they suppress. They don't follow anything other than suppression.
In other words, you're implying that the United States government has suggested to the editors of Life and to the editors of the Los Angeles Examiner that they should not...
I'm not suggesting who did anything, John. I'm just suggesting it's being done. I know editors myself who have told me personally they have been told not to print.
Well, I don't want to go in and I don't want to be repetitious
what I'm
about
getting at is
why don't they tell me to stop?
Well, there may be a purpose in it now that there wasn't then. There may be a reason. Whose purpose? There may be a purpose in having you bring out all these various things for their information.
But if they already know it?
I know top engineers in the aviation field who came to my place regularly hoping to find out something about the methods by which they could control something by thought, which led me to believe that they were connected with research that might be conducted on these saucers, which are thought controlled. And the fact that they didn't know how to control them. And I readily agreed to help them in any way I could, and in fact I did. I told them exactly what to do and how to do it, but they still don't know how to do it because they have no knowledge of thought communication. I'd have to give them a 2-year course in how to to work with thought.
Can you teach somebody?
Certainly, anybody can learn.
Anybody can learn.
That's right. If they're
Telepathic
Anybody?
yes,
Anybody?
anybody. Well, I can take a person that was attending a trial in 25 years or something like that.
We would say the average person or many people.
The average
You
person.
mean that the person doesn't require what's called psychic ability?
No, there's no such thing as psychic ability connected to it.
Mm-hmm.
Psychic ability is an intuitive thing. That's something you get at first. Or like hunches, you can call them hunches. And the thought of communication process is a mechanical means of doing things. I mean, there are steps in which you can take. This is just the same as the ignition or timing on an automobile.
Last night, I heard Dan Fry speak of this several times as being, I believe, an electronic process. Is that right, Dan?
Well, I say that it could be demonstrated electronically. It could be reached electronically.
More parallel rather than...
Yes, I was attempting to make the process understandable to persons who have studied electronics and haven't studied anything else. It can be demonstrated electronically. It can produce a device together.
Well, now let's get back to this word proof again. Dan said a while ago under certain circumstances it can almost be impossible to prove anything. I disagree with that a little bit, because I believe you can always carry knowledge back to a point where it is provable. For instance, I believe we would all agree that we are here on the earth, and that is provable, and someplace between that kind of a statement and one of the right things that we all at the time is a true situation. But this matter of what constitutes proof about a flying saucer or spacecraft or a UFO intrigues me, because I have never yet been able to dream up any circumstance, situation, or object which would actually constitute proof, say, in a court of law or before a jury of scientists. Dan, have you got any idea?
Well, this is a question of cumulative evidence. This question was once brought up, you remember, to the ex-head of the Royal Air Force. He was asked if he believed in saucers, and he said, yes, I believe that they're real. And he was asked if he'd ever seen one, and he says, no, I've never seen one, and he says, I've never seen Australia either, but I believe that it exists, and we can take that as a good starting point. I might ask everyone here if they believe that the continent of Australia exists. Most of us would say that we do. But if you try to prove, by material proof, that continent exists, you're going to have an awful tough job.
Well, I see your point.
You can amass a tremendous amount of evidence, but no one piece of that evidence is going to be proof, because every bit of it could have been faked, every bit of it could have been arranged, every bit of it could have been manipulated.
That's exactly
you have
right.
to have a mass of cumulative evidence is the only thing that constitutes true proof.
In my book, I've taken the attitude that while no single piece of evidence for flying saucers that I have presented might stand on its own feet, that when you have enough indications, it's tantamount to being proved. And when you come right down to it, you cannot possibly prove that the sun is going to rise tomorrow morning. It has been doing it for millions of years, but it may not do it tomorrow morning. Of course, we won't see it either. All right, Hans, what have you got?
Mr. Tassel, when you talk to your people in California, how do you go about proving these things?
Well, I had a crippled boy and his wife come into my place one day, and he told me he came to discuss flying saucers.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, why do you want to discuss flying saucers? Have you ever seen one? And he said, no, I never have. I said, well, why do you believe there are such things? And he said, well, I believe in God, and I never saw him either.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of an answer are you going to give a person when they answer you like that?
Yes.
Belief is something similar to faith, only belief is actually taken from the word belie, which means counterfeit. Belief is a counterfeit faith. That's what it amounts to. But it cannot be detected from the real faith.
But in your college, University of Wisconsin, Institute for
Parapsychology.
Psychological research?
No, it is.
How do you go about, how do you...
Pardon me, let him answer the question first. You asked the question.
We are probably the only group that I know of in the United States that you could call saucer-minded or saucer researchers that are actually doing something about it. We're not still trying to find out if these things are or public sightings, and never public sightings. We are trying to do something with the evidence we already have.
Some of us who are very much interested in this field find a little confusing is the apparent need for tracking, almost theoretical tracking, in order to bring across this message from the people in capital letters to us lay people. Why is there need for this? Why is there need for this mystical, if you forgive me the thing, which is something so peculiar to the air out in California? Because if we are the vehicles through which wisdom is to be brought to us, this some of this rather curious testimony are completely necessary.
Well, you see, like Dan said, we are not trying to sell anybody. We don't care whether anybody believes in flying saucers or not. And in fact, I've disproved more of them than I've proven to people that have come out in my face who want to believe in flying saucers. This thing, there was no reason for this in the first place. No reason for all this controversy or skepticism or anything else. It's the government agencies that investigated this thing, that openly investigated. But like everything else, where the ego predominates, certain officials decided this must be kept under security. So, despite the fact, well, certainly they knew every other government knew as much about it as they did. They're not keeping anything from another nation. Every other government on the face of the earth knows as much about flying saucers as this government does. These things are all over the world. They're not just...
well, does that mean that they do know anything about them? You say they know as much as any other government.
That for years. I can't say any stronger. They know what they are. They know how
they know as much as we do about them.
They don't know a few of the things that I know, but then on the other hand, I don't know some of the things they know.
Do they really believe that there are people landing here in flying saucers from other planets?
Well, I talked to 2 brain surgeons who post-mortem the brains of 16 bodies. Now, certainly if the Air Force called in civilian brain surgeons to examine brains, they must know the flying saucers existed that the bodies were taken.
Of who? Who are these 16 people? Of space people?
Yes, definitely.
Identifiable as such?
Well, they identified them by the fact that the fiber of the brain indicated they were from 300 to 700 years old, according to our own scale and stars under a microscope. That was not only...
There we run right back into the same old definition of life definition of what constitutes proof. You have been told by 2 brain surgeons that they did this thing and thus and so as the evidence and the opinion, and you have to take that on their say-so, just as everybody else has to take your statements or Menzies' statements or Dancy's statements as to contact.
That's right. But as I say, if this hadn't been started under a security measure, as something happening to the world rather than to a nation. You see, if something had happened to a nation, then I believe it is privileged to withhold this information from other nations if they feel that it is definitely for their own security.
Do you know the name of these brain surgeons?
No, I don't, John.
Is this name available?
No, they're not a
Did you say you talked to them?
I talked to them, yeah.
And you don't know their
At
names?
the time, I was not concerned with their names.
Supposing I
They
came up
introduced
to you...
themselves and they gave their names. My wife talked to them. I had witnesses to talk to them.
And they gave the names?
They gave their names and they talked to us for 2 hours, and I had witnesses to the fact that they said what I just got you.
Supposing you didn't know me and I walked into your place out at Giant Rock Airport.
Yeah.
And I said, my name is Joe Blow, I'm a brain surgeon. Would you believe that?
I would believe it if you talked in terms of brain surgery that made sense to my reasoning, yes.
Supposing I had a little medical background, 2 or 3 years of medicine.
Okay.
Possibly I would have some...
In other words, you're trying, you see, when anybody tries to offer YouTube, John, that's your failure right there, because when I try to offer YouTube, you reject it on the basis of
I'm willing to accept
days.
it. I'm open for it.
Yeah.
This is WOR Radio, your station in New York. This is Long John with the party line, 710 on your dial. Now, once again with the party line, my guest this morning, George Van Tassel. Dan Fry is the man that claims that he was in a flying saucer, took a trip from the White Sands Proving Ground in New Mexico to New York and back in a period of 32 minutes. Hans Depp and Sanderson is with us this morning, the editorial director of Fantastic Universe. And I'd like to remind you people on the party line who are interested in flying saucers that the current edition of Fantastic Universe, dated August, it's on sale at your newsstand, has 2 excellent articles about flying saucers. It'll give you both sides of the flying saucer question. The one article is written by Ivan Sanderson, who's been a guest on the program many times. It's entitled UFOs, Friend or Foe. The other article is written by Lester Del Rey. It's entitled The Flying Saucer Myth. We also have with us another author of many flying saucer books, Morris K. Jessup, and his most recent book is The Expanding Case for the UFOs. I'd like to get back, George, to that discussion that we were in at the time that we had to do a little business. I have to make a buck once in a while, you know. It seems to me that you made the statement that I was not willing to accept truth when it's given to me. Is that right?
Well, I told you something had happened, John, and because I couldn't offer you the names of these 2 men, at the time they told me this thing, I wasn't interested in saucer research. We were conducting a research on something entirely different that had nothing to do with flying saucers.
Is this prior to the time that you had received telepathic communications from other planets?
No. But I wasn't interested in the saucers as a researcher. In other words, we were having experience and doing certain things ourselves, but we didn't know that this was something that whole groups would be doing or that controversies would arise over or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
To us at the time, it was just a little incident that takes place every day, as real as anything else, and nothing to especially question people about or keep a record of everybody you talk to that comes on the place. We run a public airport and feeding 300 to 500 people a week, and we can't write down every conversation we have.
Well, did these 2 doctors arrive at your airport in the plane?
No, they drove me.
Well, certainly this must have been a very exciting day for you when 2 brain surgeons arrive at your airport and they're going to tell you about 16 operations that they performed.
Well, contrary to being exciting, it was very dull because I had so much information prior to that was only just further evidence in my book.
On that? Information on that?
That was just further
I
evidence.
thought you weren't interested at the time in this field.
Well, I wasn't interested to the extent that I wanted to write down their names or keep a record of anything that they said. I had witnesses that they said it. That should have been sufficient. for any purpose. I had no idea of ever discussing it over the air or publishing or anything else.
No, I can understand that.
This controversy seems to hinge on the fact that no names were given. I don't see where the proof would be any more complete if names had been given.
The names were given.
Well, I mean, if you had the names, supposing you could call 2 names tonight. What additional proof would that entail?
Well, I think it would prove this. In other words, if you mentioned the names of 2 great brain surgeons, possibly I wouldn't recognize their names, but no doubt some of our listeners. We have many doctors that listen to the program, and they possibly would want to talk to these 2 brain surgeons and get some of this information. I think it's very exciting.
There's no doubt, but when they were called in under security.
But they did divulge this
because
information
I think
to
they
you.
figured we were out in the middle of nowhere and we knew about this thing, and they came and discussed with me because they had to get something off their chest to somebody. That's the attitude.
So you feel they picked you more or less at random?
We have many prominent people come to us and discuss this subject because they feel that they can unload some burden they're carrying or some strange experience that's happened to them.
Well, did they have a strange experience? No. In other words, had these 2 doctors, did they make the statement to you that they had also received telepathic communications or actually ever talked to a person from another planet?
No, but they did say that before they examined the brain, because the dentist had examined the teeth, and they talked to the dentist, and they said the dentist stated that in the 16 bodies there was no evidence of either decay or repair of the teeth. And they said that naturally was startling to them, and it was quite startling to find out that they were running a post-mortem on brains of people from some other planet.
Maybe they've got fluoridated water on the other planet.
And chances are these 2 men were under security at the time, if not still. This word security, this thing that keeps things secret, is one of Satan's tools. It is the most vicious thing that can happen in a free country, because behind that curtain of security, the very forces that we are against, the evil, destructive forces that take over government, are operating.
But we don't know that half of it.
Well, I maintain that this subject should be brought out behind security.
Well, we're trying to do that tonight.
It is not anything that concerns the defense of this nation.
I think we're all perfectly willing to help you bring that
I know in the Venuto case, I don't know the names of...
in the what?
Venuto. In the Venuto case.
I'm not familiar with that.
Well, that's been often called the L.A. Times case. The Los Angeles Times case. We call it the Venuto case. I happen to be one of the first people that investigated that before it was officially investigated. And I got into it strictly. I know it wasn't an accident now, but I thought so at the time. Simply because I happened to be at the right place at the right time. And this man who had this Venusian contacting for a job with the Los Angeles Times had caused this man to feel that possibly he was becoming mentally unbalanced or something. The things that were taking place right in his presence were just not earthly possible. And so he in turn called a friend of his who was an occult scientist, I call him, because he did administer occult science, and
he's a minister of occult science?
They don't call him a minister. I don't know what you...
Well, I mean, was he a
practitioner or
Christian metaphysicist?
Christian
metaphysicist? Was he an Indian?
No, he wasn't Indian.
Metaphysician?
Metaphysician. And after he heard the story from his friend, why, he in turn was a very close friend of Frank Scully. So Frank was interested in saucers, so he called Frank and told him the story. Well, Frank in turn phoned another party whose house I happened to be at to get him to go investigate it, because this man did most of the investigation of all kinds of saucer contacts and stories. And so he and I together immediately made a luncheon appointment with this man in the L.A. Times case, who I'll call Mr. B. And we went and had lunch with him. He phoned and invited him to have lunch with us, and he was very reluctant at first to come. But he told us all the things that had happened. In fact, his wife was beginning to think he was a little off the beam, but he had physical evidence. See? This man had done some things to a metal plate which no human can possibly do. And we got the metal plate and run an analysis on it.
What happened to the Venetian?
Well, as far as I know, he's still running around the streets and somewhere in the country. Because he came to my place 6 months after he quit down in Los Angeles. He didn't work for the Times. Actually, they didn't employ him.
Oh.
This man, Mr. B, referred him to a friend of his who worked for Los Angeles County Defender's Office, an attorney. And in turn, he worked by the day out of petty cash for the Los Angeles County Defender's Office.
In other words, so there's no documentary, there's no record of his employment.
There's a record.
If he was working and being paid per diem,
physical evidence as witnesses to the fact he worked there.
But if he's being paid per diem, there would be no
he didn't
no
have
social security record.
He didn't have the means to identify himself by our system. That's why he made it a point of getting a job.
Couldn't that have been arranged?
Sure, he arranged it.
Couldn't that have been arranged for him to get those identification?
I don't know how. He would have to have a place of birth and so forth. And he'd only landed here up near Barstow, California, and he told these people he was from Venus, and he told the man in the L.A. Times office he was from Venus.
What did he look like?
Well, he looked like Earth people, except he had no appearance of a beard or whiskers, which they had said they whipped the shaving problem a long time ago, so he had no appearance of whiskers or anything like that.
I'm happy I haven't got a razor blade sponsor tonight, but go ahead.
He was approximately the same height as our people, and he did phenomenal things in this time he was employed there for the 5 weeks he was with
Were those phenomenal things, physical things, completely physical, or do you think he used other forces that you and I don't
possess? He used
control
of sure, because he traveled, they gave him a list of names that would normally require days of automobile or our surface transportation to get around these places. They were scattered all over Southern California, and he completed the whole round in 5 hours, which the distance is covered to get to all these addresses, where all of them said he walked up the door and they signed the wrist or whatever he presented them with. This particular phenomenal thing with speed was one thing, which of course, the same thing happened back in the Greek times, and they named the man the Greek god Mercury because they pictured him in wings on his feet because he could get around. It's the same condition he used which Howard Menger described, these pulsating belts, these anti-gravity belts, or gravity nullifying belts, where he could just step off the ground and take off, and he could be in Santa Ana and nothing flat. Apparently was. Because the course he covered was approximately 300 miles. He completed it in 5 hours and got 20 signatures.
I don't mean to...
that does. Well known to the authorities. I know that because the authorities were called in to investigate it.
I don't mean to express any doubt, of course, but no, gravity belt, for example, is an old timer in science fiction.
That's right. Well, science fiction, didn't get these ideas from nowhere. They already existed.
Of course, the submarine all the time. It's one of the oldest timers in science fiction.
Well,
it doesn't mean that it can't exist.
Yes, of course, the submarine dates back from the old Spanish time, but I'm talking about more recent material.
Gravity belt in the Bible.
This merely indicates that there is a certain lapse of time between science fiction and fact.
Yes, that's what John Campbell
when we're dealing with the surface of the planet.
And when you come to understand time, you can see why there's a lapse.
What age, how long did this man say that people lived on Venus? Did his account of Venus coincide, for example, with Howard?
I didn't discuss those things with this man. This man, when he came to my place, he came in the middle of a large meeting that we were holding, and there were 22 people in the room at the time he disappeared and reappeared 3 times in front of us to show us how he could do it. I had 22 witnesses to that.
Yeah.
But he drove a Cadillac into the place, and he had another man and 2 women with him. although none of the others ever spoke. They never said a word from the time they arrived till they left.
Of course, you're aware that appearance or reappearance, which doesn't necessarily imply a physical presence in a room, is something which a lot of Indian mystics are credited with being able to likewise do.
Yeah, but I've never seen one yet that could do it.
Well, but I mean, the point is that
the biggest bunch of fakers in this country are these people that claim they can do something.
Yes, but
I've never found one yet that can do it, including these people who contend that they can contact the space people with infrared and solar red and infragreen and all kinds of gadgets. I've never seen one on earth that could contact.
No, but I mean, this question of appearing and disappearing in a room, for example,
explain that very simply.
Is not
exactly how it is done. I know that when he was invisible, he was just as solid, and I could feel him just the same as I could when I could see him.
He was quite
solid. He was still there, he was solid, and I could see him.
Did you want to answer the
Well, I
question
was
there? Go
just
ahead.
going to ask George Van Tassel if he wasn't being just a little bit inconsistent when he criticizes the people who claim contact through infrared rays or light beams or some of these other means of communication that have been pretty well advertised. If he denies the statements of these people,
no, I didn't deny them. I said I have never seen one of them yet perform for me. I've seen plenty of them come to my place with their gadgets, and when I asked them to show me, let's see it work, none of them have ever worked. They've never made a contact.
May I take a moment? I think you brought up the word gadget. I have a letter here from Howard E. Jensen, who's chairman of the Department of Sociology and Anthropology at Duke University, located in Durham, North Carolina. I know that Dr. Jensen has listened to the program many times, and Mrs. Jensen. I received letters from them. This letter is not addressed to me. This is addressed to the gentleman we just met this evening, Jules St. Germain. And I thought in all fairness, you might want to comment on this as far as gadgets are concerned. The letter is addressed to Mr. Jules St. Germain, care of LongJohn, station WOR, New York, New York. Dear sir, last night my wife picked up the LongJohn program and heard your expose of George Van Tassel, Howard Menzer, and others. I think Dr. Jensen is referring to the HO pictures that particular night. And he goes on to say, it seems to me that if, as my wife reports, Van Tassel is requesting aid for his rejuvenating experiment by holding out rejuvenation promises to Playboy millionaires on the grounds that he has already succeeded in rejuvenating work with lower organisms, he could and should be prosecuted by the postal authorities for using the mails to defraud. This movement would appear to be a gigantic hoax, which constitutes a great mental health menace to hundreds of thousands of persons, and on that ground alone should be under the close scrutiny of federal and state and legal authorities. I am not in favor of censorship of ideas, speech, and publications, no matter how fantastic. But where there are anti-social possibilities, as there seem to be in this movement, there should be legal action, prompt and vigorous, wherever the slightest legal evidence of using the mails to defraud can be shown. The final paragraph is personal.
Let me with this gentleman that's listening, or the man that brought it, that I have never asked for any money from anybody for rejuvenation of anything. I have never asked for money anywhere at any time on this program, in any of my lectures, or any other time. I have been asked questions a number of times as to what it would cost for a particular building or a particular...
I think you mentioned that last time.
And I have answered what the approximate cost would be, but I have never requested at any time from anybody any money for anything. Any money that is donated for the work we're doing is donated by people who feel that we're doing something because they've come and investigated on their own and made a contribution toward anything we're doing. And like I say, we've got evidence we're doing something of a physical nature. We are not running around the country promoting money for anything.
No, the reason I like
promoting believers in flying saucers. We don't care whether they believe or not.
George, the reason I bring this letter up is due to the fact that you've just been commenting on gadgets, such as green ray, red ray, infrared ray, and things like that. And you felt that possibly these things did not exist as far as methods of communicating with other planets because you've seen no evidence of it. In other words, no one has ever shown it to you. Now, is it true then that when people are interested in the possibilities of this machine, you showed me some photographs of 3, I'll have to employ the same term, gadgets they're used, and they're put together, and they create this rejuvenating machine. Have you ever showed this machine, have you ever demonstrated this machine to the people who may be interested in it?
No, for the simple reason that this particular machine, if it passes a zero phasing stage, will disintegrate anything put into it.
Unfortunately, I do not understand that terminology. Could you explain that to me, please?
I can't explain it to you because I'm dealing with a science that our science knows nothing about. I'm not dealing with anything electronically, so I can't use electronic terms. I have to use the terms that fit the conditions. And all I know, and this is not the rejuvenation thing. The thing I showed you the pictures of has nothing to do with the rejuvenation.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was a miniature machine.
No. The apparatus that was for the rejuvenation, I said, works on a primary energy principle, and this was the nearest we could come to it without building the cage device that's caged into the lines of force. This is the nearest we could do anything toward that line with what we call the Earth's magnetic field, which is a secondary energy.
I would like to point out at this point that this appears to be another case where a person is offering an opinion, a rather definite opinion, and in a rather impolite way about something that they admit they know absolutely nothing about. There's no evidence in this letter whatever that the writer of this letter has ever investigated any part. I perhaps shouldn't take part in this because it has nothing to do with me, but I can't help but point out the fact that this is another case where the writer obviously believes so strongly in his own opinion that he feels there's no necessity to supplement that opinion with any investigation.
Well, is the machine available for investigation?
May I see the letter, John?
Yes, sure.
The letter is written with the intent of putting propaganda thoughts into people's minds to prosecute me as a mental hazard. That's what the letter is written for. It does that very thing. It suggests certain things should be done. This is the menace of the same people that are working behind security to take over this country.
Who are those people?
Who are the people?
Who are those people who are working to
How
take
do we
over
know
the country?
who they are? They're hidden behind a word called security. So far as I can find out, I don't know who they are.
Well, but you are referring to them. You're implying that they are behind this attempt.
No, I don't say they're behind this letter.
This letter,
this is equivalent, or this letter signed by Howard E. Jensen. This man has never come and talked to me. We don't know if I should even mention my name in a letter such as this without at least trying to find out who I am.
Well, he is a listener to the program.
But Mr. Fantastic.
Now, he says this movement would appear to be a gigantic hoax. Now, it's only what appears to be a gigantic hoax. The only hoax on this program is the HO pictures. They are confessed a hoax. I don't know of any other hoax, but this man implies that it seems to me that if, as my wife reports, now is he talking or is his wife reporting? Van Tassel is requesting aid for his rejuvenation experiments. Now, I don't know where he gets the idea I'm requesting aid. There's no status of any such request at all.
Pardon me a moment. Jules, would you just come over here a moment? Maybe you have more knowledge of
It says here that he has already succeeded in rejuvenating work with lower organisms. I didn't say I had succeeded in rejuvenating work with lower organisms.
Well, I think he was,
he misunderstood.
He's referring, rather, to the lizard.
That's right. He could and should be prosecuted by the postal authorities for using the mail to defraud. Well, now there he is suggesting something that he knows will be brought out in the air. Why should I be prosecuted by the postal authorities for using the mail to defraud? I'm not asking anybody for anything.
Well, in all fairness, I have never had the pleasure of talking with Dr. Jensen, and you know the letter is not addressed to me.
No, it's addressed to Jules Maine. It's addressed to the man who performed the hoax, not to me.
Have you contacted Mr. Jensen since you received this letter?
You know, as a matter of fact, John, I just saw it.
Was this one of the letters that you just received?
That is right. I just saw it about 10 minutes ago for the first time. I thought it might be of interest in view of the fact that his opinions pretty well coincide with mine.
And where did he get these opinions? On this program?
I cannot probe into this gentleman's mind, Mr. Van Tassel. I read on the air some months ago excerpts from your proceedings of the College of Universal Wisdom. I think any normal thinking mind would interpret those statements of yours as a direct pitch for funds.
I don't know where there is anything other than on the second page, which is the page that tells who is responsible for the printing and so forth, other proceedings. It says something about funds for the research are essential to keep it going.
Well, to understand, Mr. Van Tassel, you have a research laboratory being constructed.
We have a blueprint about printing,
and your rejuvenation, you can't understand, is part of that.
It'll be in that building. Right?
Well, could I refresh your recollection of some of your own words from...
Yes.
Well, just before you do, if you have something there that you want to look up, here's a bulletin from the WOR newsroom. The United States and her allies have nullified the 4-year-old Korean armistice agreement.
I might say, I think Mr. Van Tassel has very cleverly, when I use that word, in his proceedings, avoided the words, please give me money. But his periodicals have been so phrased that there's implicit in the words that he uses a asking for funds. Now, just to quote from his proceedings, there's so much of this stuff here, it's hard to pick it out. July 1st, 1954. He refers to the College of Universal Wisdom, its purpose. Among the things I'm quoting now, we've received data about are rejuvenation, extension of the human lifespan, electrical energy at no cost, life motors that require no fuel, the elimination of requirements for work through the application of free energy mechanisms, the elimination of disease from the earth, also the development of conoscopes, sensor scans, crystallographs, and other instruments used by the space people. With the perfection of any of these, through research, the means to make and use them will be advanced to the people without cost. The college research is to your benefit at no cost to humanity, except the free contributions you make voluntarily to make these things possible. That's a darn good commercial, in my opinion. Let me go a little further.
Let me answer that.
All right.
Let's be fair about this.
I certainly want to be.
All right. That is a statement of fact. There is no thing there. Naturally, anything we do today requires some money to do it.
Well, then you are asking for money, aren't you?
No, I'm not asking for it. I only stated it was necessary for the purpose.
And what is the invitation? For people to contribute.
It only indicates I'm stating that money for the purpose is necessary. I didn't ask anything.
You are stating such facts as rejuvenation, such facts as longevity of life, and if I might take a little exception with your calling those facts, permit me to. And then at the end, very subtly, Mr. Van Tassel, very subtly,
I know you're a lawyer.
the college research is to your benefit, at no cost to humanity, except the free contributions you make voluntarily to make these things possible. I say again, sir, that is a pip and a clever pip.
Is that any different than a preacher asking for a little collection to maintain the church or anything that's required by contributions?
A moment ago you were saying you were asking for no contributions. Now you're drawing an analogy to the preacher.
No, I said that...
You're blowing hot and cold in the same breath.
I said that the contribution is necessary to maintain the research. We operate by contributions.
Then you are asking for contributions, aren't you? A moment ago you said you were not.
I don't think so. Could I interject?
Go ahead, Dan.
I think the statement here merely indicates that if there are no contributions, there can be no research.
That's right.
I don't think this could be strictly implied as a request. It is, as it says, a statement of fact. If there are contributions, there can be research. If there are no contributions, there can't be.
That's what it
This isn't a definite request to anyone to donate.
May I ask one question, Mr. Van Tassel? In your proceedings, which, paraphrasing a remark of yours earlier, strangely enough, some of us don't see over here too often. In your proceedings, do you report regularly on the researches that you are conducting?
Do I report regularly?
Do you report on the research that you are conducting?
I report
in the colored
anything
with diagrams, details,
or prove it to. When we prove
anything of a proven nature?
Yeah, we're not going to
anything of an apparently proven nature, you mean?
Each stage of its operation.
Anything of an assumedly proven nature, you mean?
I mean that, anything that we definitely know we can back up.
Would the rejuvenation of the lizards be an example of what you can definitely...
Rejuvenation of lizards.
Well, smashing the head in and then having the head grow back, is that the story?
The head doesn't grow back.
Have you photographs proving this?
I showed LongJohn some photographs. I haven't them with me tonight. There's only pictures of this small...
Well, except that if you saw them, that's...
Why don't you tell us what you do with the lizards?
May I just for a moment, those two? It is very true that, I forget which morning it was at this point. I think it was Wednesday morning. George had a number of photographs here, and one group of photographs showed three, and you'll pardon me if I use this term, gadgets, the only way I can describe it, three pieces of equipment. And he also had a 12-inch square next to it so that you can get a little idea of the size of these pieces of equipment. George also mentioned that they were not put together in their proper fashion so that anybody seeing the photograph would not know how this machine would function. Isn't that true? In other words, they were separated. About the only way I could say is if we wanted to show a lead pencil, you'd have some graphite and you'd have some wood over here, and you'd say, eventually I'll make something that I can write with.
Well,
when I put these together.
These were 4 pieces of equipment. Each one was built up out of
3.
No, there were 4, and each one was built up out of other pieces.
I realize that.
They were built up pieces of equipment in themselves.
Can I contribute a slightly skeptical note here? I have a research worker in addition to being an editor. If you showed me these pictures, and on the back there were notations by an independent witness saying that I testify, notarized notations, saying I testify that at 1:05 this was the physical appearance of the lizard. The next picture I testified at 1:15. I testified at 1:25. I think I would be completely receptive.
These pictures were only taken to bring back here so LongJohn.
Well, but you see, you can understand that in the absence of...
I have witnesses that have seen these things work. I don't need to write on the back of the picture.
Could you tell us the names of the witnesses?
You should write. I'm suggesting the witnesses should write.
I haven't their addresses with me.
Well, could you tell us the name?
One of them, his name is Zarno.
Yes.
2 of his friends, who I don't recall their name because my association was not with them.
Are they the only witnesses?
No, there's several of their wives.
Any other men?
Wives? Yes, there's other people.
May I make this suggestion, George?
for our listeners, because there are many nights that they're not with us on the program, and after all, we just started the program back in August, and we were only on the air for 2 or 3 months. That was the last time that you appeared on the program. I wonder if you'd be kind enough and just give us a brief outline of what happened on the desert when you found the 2 lizards with the crest head.
What happened when I found them?
Well, you handled it any way you wanted.
We didn't find them. In fact, most of this research was conducted by this man Darnell, who was an associate.
Is that his last name?
Yes.
First name? His last name.
And the lizard's head was smashed against a bench or table or something.
Was this done intentionally?
Yeah.
To conduct the experiment?
It was done intentionally.
Well, don't mind me asking the question, because I'm not too familiar with the story at this point.
The only thing is that we found out in this research that at the time phase exceeded the differential of this field, that the lizard was completely disintegrated. And so we demonstrated again that the very forces which we can heat ourselves with can also burn us. And in other words, this particular field not only assembles the atomic structure of the head and makes it well again, but if you don't get him out of there in the right time, why, there won't be anything left of him. So we've held a lot of this information for that reason, because we're dealing with a force that's greater than atomic energy. It's prior to atomic energy, and even atoms are born from it. Prior
to atomic energy?
Yes, it's the force from which atoms are born.
Oh, I see.
Atoms come into being.
Precisely what happens to the heads of this lizard, according to your story, sir?
Precisely what happens is that every atom is like a person. It's intelligent to a certain extent. It knows its purpose as an element. And as all of the people who left that lecture tonight knew their way home without having to ask anybody, when these atoms are dispersed in the crushing of the head, if they are permitted to be removed from all forces which tend to hold them apart, they will immediately reassemble themselves into what they would call home, or the last position they knew in relation to each other.
This is a quality I believe is called plastic memory formation.
Anyway, that's what takes place.
Yeah, well, to reduce it to basic fundamentals, and to understand, so you're without too descriptive words, you smash in the head of the lizard, you put it under the machine, according to your story, under certain conditions, and the head grows back to normal.
And the head goes back to normal.
Now, may I ask you, sir, how many witnesses you had to this? Actually,
I said 6 or 7. I don't recall right offhand. There might have been 8 or there might have been 12. I just can't recall exactly at the moment, because I can show anybody or take anybody to the witnesses out there, but I can't present them here.
Wasn't it true, George, if my memory serves me correctly, that during the time that you conducted this experiment with the lizards and the crest heads and the rejuvenating machine, that there were 2 brain specialists there?
No, the 2 brain specialists only came into my place and told me about these brains they analyzed.
Well, as I must frankly admit to you, I could be wrong, but it seems that if my memory serves me correctly, that when you were with me last October, that you mentioned that there were 2 brain specialists at that time, and I also asked you the question if you knew the names, and they were from 2 major hospitals in the West Coast.
No. May I ask this, Mr. Van Tassel? Do all these people come out from the West Coast, your witnesses, they're all out there? Yeah, well, I just want to remind you, your memory is very bad. I spoke to you at the Pythian Temple when you lectured there. You told me the name of one of your witnesses was Smith from Chicago, another Wainwright from Indianapolis, but you couldn't give me the precise address. Your story has changed, or your memory is very bad.
Your story has changed, because I don't know any Smith in Chicago.
I imagine there are. I know there's a very convenient name.
Chicago is Simon. You might have thought Simons and then turned it into Smith, because Simons is the man, not Smith.
Well, nobody. They're all from the West Coast. You just said a moment ago. Now in Chicago,
these
Indianapolis.
particular men are working on equivalent research, but they are not witnesses to the thing that I had.
Well, once again, sir, I say your story has changed, but you're getting away from... Well, you're getting away from the very basic issue. A moment again, you vehemently said you were not asking for contributions for the rejuvenation machine.
Right.
Now you're justifying the contributions. Now let me just quote again. And once again, your language always tries to leave you a loophole. You tell that the property, you mentioned here, I don't want to read the whole thing about the rejuvenation machine. You say, after the building and apparatus are constructed, it will require at least a year of research to learn to control it actually on this planet. I intend to test it on myself first. The property, 10 acres, has been legally assigned to this organization by my wife and myself. We have piped water out of the property, the ground is surveyed. All that is needed now is the building and the apparatus. The building will cost approximately $26,000. More than this amount is spent continuously by people for things that bring no result. The apparatus will cost an additional $20,000 to $30,000. This is not any expenditure at all for such a benefit to humanity.
That's right.
Of course, you know there will be plenty of skeptics who have never done anything for anyone else but themselves who will ridicule all this.
Yeah.
The government can appropriate billions for weapons to destroy, so we do hope that they, the governmental authorities, will be interested in financing anything to prolong human life. We are not asking for anything. We do have, the two is underlined by you, by the way, the information to make rejuvenation possible, adding 60 to 80 years on the average lifespan, plus resumption of useful vitality. Think about it. Some of you tired out, millionaire playboys, and what a kick that is. You still don't want contributions, Mr. Van Tassel?
That is just a sarcastic remark on my part. That is not a plug for money.
So as a matter of fact, in every issue you ask for money, don't you?
No, I don't ask for money.
Contributions?
In the front, to the trustees of the organization and so forth, we're supported by contributions. We're the same as a church.
Oh, well, I think a lot of ministers might disagree with you, sir.
Well, you would disagree with me entirely. I don't know what your motive is in this whole thing. But
my motive is to protect people and to avoid fraud being perpetrated on the public, which is precisely why I am here tonight.
Come to Yucca Valley, California, and investigate out where the business is instead of back here.
Investigate.
You don't know what's going on.
I asked you at the Pythian Temple, Mr. Van Tassel, refresh your recollection, would you be willing to demonstrate the rejuvenation of a lizard before disinterested newspaper reporters? And this was asked after you had been declaiming the press for the entire evening to fail to give you publicity.
Oh,
you said,
I never condemned the press for not giving me publicity.
Well, let me finish, please. You said that it wouldn't prove anything. I wouldn't show this to newspaper reporters.
Right, because they wouldn't know what they were seeing when they
But
saw
you
it.
would show it to me. Pardon me if I doubt your words, sir. I asked you if you'd show it to scientists. You said to me, what would that prove? It wouldn't prove anything.
What would it prove?
Show it to me. Would that prove something? If there were one iota of truth in what you are saying, don't you think by the demonstration of these miraculously revived lizards, you'd have the world convinced? If any eminent, let me finish please, sir. If any eminent, disinterested scientist saw this lizard's head grow back into shape, don't you think you'd say, this is a wonderful man?
Yeah.
Don't think your program would be sold? But you show it to Smith or Wainwright or
program.
But you want to benefit humanity.
That's right.
Don't you think the government would be glad to help you, to finance you in this effort, instead of asking for millionaire playboys to help you?
I didn't ask any millionaire playboys. Show me where it asked any millionaire playboys.
The implication is so clear I will not split here.
You're going by implication. That's your interpretation of it.
Well, Mr. Jensen heard me read this. He got the I don't know Mr. Jensen. I understand that he's a very well-known Dr. Jensen, sociologist.
And anthropologist.
I said one thing. Mr. Van Tassel has asked me why I'm here tonight. And one of the reasons I'm here is the remarks he made on Tuesday night, as you would say.
Well, may I make this suggestion, Jules, and I hope that you'll accept the suggestion. I mentioned to George
when he came into town, that I'd like to have him on one night with Jules. And at that time, he made the statement he saw no reason rehashing the H.O. letters. And this was his right as a guest. In turn, he made some comments because I brought up the question about H.O. letters. And in turn, as you know, you're in New York all the time. You can come on the program any night if you want. You happen to stop up here tonight with Ben over here just to say hello. This letter was handed to me. I read the letter, and then at the moment I became confused because I didn't know whether you had spoken to him. It stated May 4th, and I thought that you could add some additional information. So, if you will, I don't think we want to talk about H.O. Well, we don't want to talk about H.O. letters, and we don't want to talk about that he said this. He has an opinion of the H.O. letters, which he has a right to that opinion. I would like to have a discussion. You happen to be here now, and you're sitting down. I think that it would be of interest to George and to Dan and to our listeners to hear this discussed as two gentlemen, and I know that both of you are gentlemen. So he commented on what you were trying to accomplish with the H.O. letters, and we could take another 4 hours and we'd accomplish nothing.
I don't want to belabor the point, John.
No, but you
may
we're
I
not
continue,
discussing,
please?
but let him have a moment, and then if I see fit, I'll stop him. Believe me, I will. Go ahead, George.
I don't want to belabor the H.O. letters. In and of themselves, I think they're rather insignificant. Their purpose was, number one, to show the gullibility of the persons with the will to believe, and secondly, that, in my opinion, Mr. Van Tassel was taking advantage of people. However, on the program the other night, there was a reference on it which was made comparing my method to Hitler. Now, that is something which I resented very much, one of the reasons I'm here tonight. Later on, a statement was made, and I'd like Mr. Van Tassel
I would like to also add, although you're welcome any night,
yes,
you are not invited here tonight to talk about that. You stopped up tonight, and this letter was presented to me, and I asked you to come in on this letter, right?
Yes, but do you think, John, that if the reference were made to your message as comparable to Hitler, that you might feel a slight resentment?
Quite true, and don't you think that you're welcome to come on the program tonight?
Mr. Van Tassel commented that I made the statement in his absence. I much rather talk to him face to face, although there were three men there, Howard Mancher, Corporal Hastings, and Mr. Lester were there to defend him that night.
Mr. Santeson.
Not to defend, I don't think exactly. He was neutral.
Neutral. That's right.
Now, Mr. Van Tassel stated this was done in his absence. Now, I don't like to do things in people's absence. No, I like to do it, Master and please, face to face. At the end of the program, Mr. Van Tassel made the statement, referring to me, that he had better back off while he can, and I'd like to know precisely what he meant by that statement. I think I'm quoting verbatim.
I don't think I said that you better back off while you can.
Back off while he can, very definitely,
possibly
sir.
I did. I could have said such a thing.
Well, now, we've been discussing this morning about proof and evidence and things of that nature. And in discussing it, it seems that you've brought up the point, and George Van Tassel has brought up the point, that you are not interested in proving anything. You want to tell the story when you have the opportunity, and it certainly has proven, to me at least, that you're interested in telling the story. You have lectured in different parts of the country, and you've written a few books, and George has done the same thing. I was just wondering, and in fact, I'd like to ask the question of George Van Tassel. George, if you're not interested in proving anything, and this is certainly your right, don't you feel that indirectly, in giving the lectures and writing the books and conducting the Interplanetary Convention each year, that indirectly it suggests to the listeners, whether they're listening to you give a lecture or whether they are reading one of your books, that basically you are trying to tell the American public that there are saucers landing on this planet and that people are arriving here from other planets and that they're here to do us good?
Definitely. We're trying to tell people some facts that are being withheld from the people.
I think you could put it this way. I can see the controversy is going to develop. If the city engineer goes out into the city park, and puts a drinking fountain out there, he's not particularly concerned whether any individual drinks from that fountain or not. It is his job to make that water available. If anyone wants to drink from it, why, they can, and if they don't, why, there's no compulsion whatever for them to do so.
Well, let me get back with George a moment. And this is not on personalities, George, because you've been on the program before and you've been with me a couple of times this trip, and I've had the pleasure of visiting with you out in California. Don't you feel that when we talk, or rather when you tell us about a rejuvenating machine and tell us about telepathic communications and these other machines, these electronic instruments that you have knowledge of, and you discuss it, do you think that it's wrong for people to want to question you and get more information about it?
No, I don't object to anybody questioning me or coming and finding out anything that we are ready to release.
Well, of course, unfortunately, not all of us are in a position financially and as far as time is concerned to take a trip out to California. I was one of the more fortunate ones.
Well, that's true enough, John. I have one project going in Detroit that I turned over to a man there who, because in my opinion, he's one of the few people in the United States qualified in our scientific field to handle the job.
Can you tell us something about this project?
Yes, it's a conoscope. It's what the space people call a conoscope.
What is this?
We have many of them today which are really replicas or duplicates or counterfeits of the real thing. The conoscope is counterfeited today in what we call a crystal ball. The original conoscope is made up in such a manner that the tuning of it is controlled by the thought of the individual looking into it.
Does it look like a crystal ball?
It looks like a crystal ball when it's finished.
When it's finished?
When it's finished. Mm-hmm. This man who happens to be conducting this particular research and making these parts that go into this thing, because they aren't just one ball, there are many parts. And the axis of these particular crystals have to be in relative directions to form three planes. And there's also three of the primary colors of that go in the three planes, and this thing will reproduce by thinking into it. It'll reproduce whatever you desire to see.
Red, black, and green.
It'll produce in full color and in motion, just like a motion picture.
And what will it do for us?
If you wanted to see your mother, say in Nebraska or someplace, you could look in it and think of your mother, and you would see her in full motion, full color. This is one of the devices they carry around their pockets. It's a thing they developed thousands of years ago, and the one
thousands of years ago they developed it.
Well, they've had it for long enough so that they had them before they built the Great Pyramid. The predictions made by Nostradamus were the result of his acquiring one of the few true conoscopes that were lost on this planet around the Great Pyramid.
Does he mention it in his book?
No, he doesn't. Without the necessity of assembling tubes and scopes and so forth, you could transmit from one of these crystals to any other crystal that were tuned to it, and use it that way as a television device.
I think you have a question.
Yeah, not so much a question, it's just a very slight comment. You know, I can't help again but being impressed by the similarity of what you're describing with some things that we find in this science fiction.
Well, that's true.
What you're describing here, for example, is very similar to what a story by Richard Faber, which is appeared in, obviously not in our magazine, but in one of our competing magazines. Practically, not word for word, but symbol for symbol,
Great. It's very interesting.
It was also described by H.G. Wells in his book of short stories and called The Crystal Age.
Is it possible that he was familiar with the chronoscope, then?
It's very possible that he was given telepathic information to write that article.
Uh-huh.
The instrument itself is under construction. It requires a terrific amount of accuracy, and this man who is doing the work is fully qualified, and he can produce anything in the way of crystals.
Who establishes his qualification?
Well, the fact that he makes precision bearings and imitation precious stones for the United States government should be sufficient qualification. He has ever since World War II. That's his business.
I wonder if I can ask one question, if I might, Mr. Bill Tassel. I know certainly you wouldn't want to give the name out over the air, but would you mind writing it in a sheet of paper with his address and giving it to LongJohn? I don't want to see it.
What good would it do for me to give it to LongJohn?
Well, I think possibly John might be interested, as a disinterested person or skeptic.
I haven't got his address on me, and I don't know it by memory. I know that I have too many places and too many people. I have to keep this all in paper.
Well, this is sort of unusual. It's chronoscope, isn't it? It seemed to me that it makes a
I don't
great
think
impression.
it's unusual. I think it's something that we would have had a long time ago if we quit trying to blow each other up and devoted our science to constructive things.
But ask John a question. John, are you out to Yucca Valley? Were you so fortunate as to watch any of the rejuvenation processes of lizards or the like?
No, during the time that I was in Yucca Valley, California, in all fairness to George Van Tassel, George was extremely busy out there. We had some 7,000 or 8,000 people on Saturday and a like a number on Sunday. It was the 11th and 12th of May. That, very frankly, I only had the opportunity of talking to George for a period of maybe 15 or 20 minutes. It should be obvious to anybody who listened to the program, that is the tapes when I came back, that I had no interview with George Van Tassel. He did not even have the time to spare to permit me to do an interview with George.
Well, I think prior to the time you went out there, John, I believe Howard Menja had been there. And
yes, he was there, I think, a couple of months prior to the convention.
On the night of the, I won't mention the initials, a certain program when Howard was here, I had a little note from him. I have it in my briefcase now where he wrote to me and said that this rejuvenation machine building hadn't even been started yet. Sure. And coming from Howard, well, I think earlier, if I recall correctly, a statement had been made that it had been started.
Oh, no.
What's your recollection, John?
I showed John the blueprint here, nice for
No, I'm talking on the fall.
Evidently, I am confused at this point. In all fairness to George, I don't have any tapes of the show. I was under the impression that George had made the statement that there were two brain specialists with him in the desert at the time that they conducted this experiment with the lizard with the crushed head, and also I was under the impression that the foundation for this building had been constructed. I could be wrong.
John, can I ask?
Yes,
I remember Howard writing the note and passing it to Jules. I can confirm that.
I have it.
Well, there isn't any building there. There isn't any question about whether Howard said it or who said it. There isn't any building there because we haven't started yet.
What buildings are there?
There's two buildings. One was required by the county because the research laboratory cannot contain any metal in the structure. Therefore, in order to have toilet facilities for sanitary conditions, the county Building and Safety Commission required that we put up a different building for the sanitary facilities. So that building is up, and the observatory is up. Now, the observatory is only temporary in the fact that the dome and the 10-inch reflector telescope on the top of it are only temporary. They're just put up there until we get the radio telescope that will mount on that building, on that track.
I saw it, pardon me a moment, Jules. As you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I did see some papers that were rather impressive, and I am led to believe, according to these papers, which had all the seals and all those sort of things on it, that George Van Tassel and his wife donated some 10 acres. Is that the correct amount? 10 acres of property to
to the College of Universal Wisdom.
Yes.
I saw these papers. Now, I'm not an attorney.
If I might, yes. If I understand, Mr. Van Tassel and Mrs. Van Tassel are trustees of the proceedings of the College of Universal Wisdom. I understand.
Four other people.
And I understand that according to Mr. Van Tassel, he is the person who signs the checks.
That's right.
Who endorses the checks. In other words, the financial structure of this organization is within his hands. I heard him say further, I believe, in Wednesday morning, that the money had to be properly applied, for example, for transportation. Now, when I ask you this question, that I'm going to answer with Mr. Van Tassel, I will press you on your transportation. What does that take in that the College of the Universal Wisdom pays for? That transportation?
That takes in anything in which any of our research or flying saucers are discussed, or any of the research that I have to go around the country on, because I have some more things being made in other places besides Detroit. It takes in anything that, in other words, some of our contributions are given string-free. There's no specified use for it by the donor.
So I'm going to ask you one simple question.
Any way we wish, providing it's used for college work.
Yes. Now, then I assume that your trip east would be paid out of the transportation fund of the college tonight, right?
It could be.
Well,
in
no.
this case, it didn't happen to be, but it could be.
It could be. I see. And also understand this is solely through contributions that the bank account of the college is built up.
That's right.
Now, on some occasions, I assume then your transportation is paid by the college.
That's right.
May I ask you, sir, I understand tonight you had approximately 1,500 persons at the lecture paying, I believe, $1 or $1.50 apiece. Do you turn this money over to the College of Proceeding of the University?
My share of that money, Dan will get half of it naturally, and my share of it will be turned into the college, because everything I make with my own money, whether it be there or any way that I may make money, is turned over directly to the college. I have no individual private money of my own.
Well, I'm sorry, I thought you said there were only contributions made up the bank account.
That's right, and that is a contribution. I contribute everything I make to the college.
In all fairness to George, this was not, tonight, this was not an admission fee. This was a donation.
Could you get in if you didn't donate?
Plenty of it did.
It was marked that way, Jules.
I wasn't there, of course, but what I...
In fact, the whole balcony.
I personally agree with this. There are 75 people and who ended up paying.
Well, I understand that according to a report, the people who were there, they had to pony up the money before they got inside. I think there's some people here now who are not in the
You can't
corner.
get out of the elevator without being inside.
Well, the idea of admission, what I'm getting at is this. I understood from contributions, it didn't refer to admissions. But assuming this, in any event, the money that goes in, you are the man who signs the check.
That's right.
You are the man who
As the head of the organization, I have to know where the money goes.
And there's no other trustees who, with you, signs the check.
No.
No.
They all trust me completely.
I see. And do by any chance, do you have any financial statements you issue to the contributors?
Yes, we do. And we make a statement every 3 or 4 months as to what progress we made on the buildings.
No, I meant financially, sir.
We don't make a financial statement because it isn't required that we make a financial statement.
Under California law?
No.
Maybe
not a non-profit organization.
I know. I have the college annual here, or about 4 years of reports, or 3 years. I'm looking very closely through here to find one statement as to how much money you've received, how much money you've put out.
Anybody that wants to examine that bank account can examine it. I don't care who they are.
Well, here's a message from Roger again. And you know, Roger smokes Cavalier cigarettes. One telegram here, and you may want to comment on it, Dan Fry. The message is, if Dan Fry is so well trained and an expert, why is he appearing on such a program as Van Tassel? Well, I would like to say to Mrs. Frank Dillon, who sent the telegram, that the program is LongJohn.
these are my guests this morning. However, I think that she's suggesting, rather she's trying to imply that you're appearing on the program with Van Tassel.
Well, of course, the answer to that's very simple, LongJohn. If I am required to defend myself for being here, then so are you and so is everyone else who is on the program. Basically, I am here to see if I can learn something. I haven't formulated any opinion during all the discussion that's going on here as yet because I haven't seen enough data come in on which a reasonable opinion could be formed. I'm still completely open-minded and I hope that before the end of the program we will actually get some data before that.
Well, but you are familiar with George Van Tassel's method of communicating with people from other planets.
Oh, yes.
And because you've had a similar experience, you possibly feel that he evidently has the same experience. Is that right?
Well, I see no reason to disbelieve it.
Fine. All right.
Since I am the one who is the detrimental aspect of this particular
Well, now, this
program,
is not my opinion, George.
Yeah, I would like to comment on it, though, because it appears to indicate that Dan shouldn't be associating with such a character as me if he is an expert. Well, I don't normally associate with experts because most of them I've found don't know what they're talking about. But I just want to, in front of LongJohn here, show you something, John, just for this woman's benefit, not for the rest of the listeners because they don't care. But this is a deputy sheriff's badge in San Bernardino County. In order to get this badge and the card that goes with it, which is here, you have to pass through every security in the nation. You have to be cleared of being any potential communist or anything like that. This is an airman's identification card issued by the Civil Aeronautics Administration. This is a pilot, a airframe and power plant mechanic's ticket also issued by them, and a state driver's license.
Well, you can shake hands with me. I'm a deputy sheriff of Essex County.
You haven't cleared, John, by every national agency?
You haven't seen anything yet. I want to really show this woman why Dan is associated.
And I'm equally as proud of my badge, too. Yeah. I don't mean
this is the real reason Dan associates with me. Because I'm also an ordained minister.
John, I was just going to ask you, in getting a deputy sheriff's badge in the state of New Jersey, are there any qualifications or security clearance?
Well, I sincerely hope that there are, but I was presented with the badge, and I'm very grateful that I have the badge and the card.
I know
I'm proud of it.
In New York, about 10 or 12 years back, a few friends of mine wanted a badge. I made 2 phone calls. The FBI, the police department, the Treasury Department, and no one else checked on them. They just got a badge, period.
Well, if you're asking me if they've checked on me, frankly, I don't know. But I really don't know.
It's very hard for me to comprehend how every security facility in the nation would check on a deputy sheriff in San Bernardino County, is it, in California?
San Bernardino, isn't it?
The FBI...
All I know, Jules, is that's what they told me at the sheriff's office when I took the examination and the requirements that I had to fulfill was that you couldn't possibly be a peace officer under the national emergency laws unless you were cleared by all securities of the nation.
I should also admit then, in all fairness, evidently your badge is entirely different from mine because, frankly, I didn't appear any place. In other words, possibly mine is just an honorary badge. I really don't know.
John, I don't know if George would object, but I've been interested. I've read certain portions of the proceedings, and I'd like to ask him a few questions about it. But before I do, I would like to ask a favor of you, John. In deference to your wishes, and I think to George's request, he doesn't want to discuss the HO story.
That's out.
Yes, right. But I would like, at a later opportunity, to reply to some of the statements he made about me on the air and in the proceedings. And I would like to state now that I would not like it to be said that I make it in George's absence, because if he were willing, I'd be very happy to make them tonight. But do I make myself clear there?
Well, I'll tell you what, George, we want to get into the discussion, and certainly if you have any questions to ask in reference to proceedings, you may do so.
Yes.
Now, look, let me ask you this. In all fairness to you, George is here,
And if you're going to say that George said this or something like that, George is here and he knows what he said. Do you think that you could give us this opinion of what has been said about you? Do you think we could wrap this up in, say, 3 or 4 minutes?
I frankly don't know. He has stated, I just want to make a couple of things. Referring to me, there's one paragraph, John.
Please.
The confessions of this paper, that's me, he said.
Pardon me, you're reading from Proceedings dated June?
I'm reading from the Proceedings dated April-May 1957. It's a long article. The confessions of this paper only reveals a sadistic desire to hurt others. This is proven by the attack upon someone 3,000 miles away at the instigation of the forces of Satan or the physical hush-hush group of the military. Have you decided yet, George, whether I'm employed...
You're referred to as a faker in that paragraph.
Yes,
is that right?
but yeah, that's, oh yes. About a dozen times there. Well, this is read over the air, but I'd like to find out this. My question is, have I done this at the instigation of Satan or the hush-hush group of the military? Have you found out yet?
Well, you certainly didn't do it at the instigation of the people of the Golden Rule.
Oh, well, I think very well, my whole motive in being here is based upon the Golden Rule. I'd like you to do unto others as I'd like them to do to me.
And you should have come and found out what you
The question is this, Mr. Van Tassel. You say I did it at the instigation of the forces of Satan, I repeat, or the physical hush-hush group of the military.
Well,
now, will you explain that?
The reason I separated those two forces is because the military forces of the hush-hush group are physical people and physical bodies operating on the earth. The forces of Satan are destructive influences that cause people to do things that they are not responsible for, in the sense because they are being directed or instigated through some mental process of control to do those things.
Well, do you think, have you decided if I am being instigated by the military or by Satan?
I didn't say that you were directed by either of them.
May I read it again?
All right.
This is proven by the attack upon someone 3,000 miles away at the instigation of the forces of Satan or the physical hush-hush group of the military. I think that's very definite. Can you explain it now?
Well, it is fairly definite, and you would have to make the decision as to what your motive is or who is influencing you.
No, but you're making the accusation. I missed it.
All I can say is that you certainly haven't done it by the forces of love or the Golden Rule.
No, you're saying two specific things, one or the other, the forces of Satan or the hush-hush group of the military.
Well, I would have mentioned two if I'd only known one. I don't know, or I wouldn't have suggested two.
I mean, you're sure it's one or the other?
No, I didn't say that. There could be other reasons.
Oh, well, maybe I missed it.
May I just ask this question a moment? I think when you showed me those cards there, the various organizations that you're associated with, you also mentioned that you're an ordained minister. You did show me the card, but I didn't read it frankly. What is the church, George?
It's the Christ Brotherhood Church.
And when were you ordained?
Just this year.
This year. Mm-hmm. Fine.
I wonder, as long as George brought the subject up, if you could explain what are the requirements for a minister being ordained in the state of California.
I haven't the faintest idea what the requirements are.
You mean you just get ordained?
Normally, in the process of ordaining ministers or receiving doctor's degrees in this country, anywhere, it seems to be that it's possible to be appointed or ordained to anything, providing somebody connected with that particular thing chooses to ordain you.
Well, I understand. Now, one thing, I was brought up, by the way, to be a minister until I fell into the forces of Satan, or the military. But my understanding was that you had to appear before a board before you were ordained in most of the churches.
Well, that's not going into the process of ordination because I don't frankly know what they are. I know that the card was sent to me on the basis of the fact that the group that ordained me felt that I was teaching the Word of God. That's the reason it was done. That's what they told me.
All right. I think that's the answer to that question. I just thought in all fairness that the fact that George Van Tassel is an ordained minister, that possibly some of our listeners would be interested in knowing the name of the church that he's associated with. All right. Now, did you want to get into something about this?
Yeah, I think Hans wanted to say
yes, go ahead.
something.
I have a couple of points I wanted to ask about. In some cases, based upon this, the Bulletin of Civilian Software Intelligence,
CSI.
Yeah, CSI, who, by the way, described you, George, as a...
what is the date of this particular bulletin?
The particular bulletin I'm referring to is dated December 15, 1956.
I think this is the one that you referred to before, and that George said he hadn't had the opportunity of reading it.
That is the one I referred to earlier. Mm-hmm. And that, incidentally, while, of course, they do say one or two slightly critical things about you,
what did they say?
They refer to you, I want to point out, too, that they refer to you as a handsome, broad-faced, fair-haired man in his early 40s with a pleasant deep voice and an easygoing manner of speech, something which I completely agree with him on the basis of this person.
Well, we're in agreement on one thing this morning anyway.
Yeah, I have two hairs.
I want to point out. You don't have three eyes.
I have two hairs.
You have two hands? You sound like some people who escaped from the front pages of my magazine. By the way, well, no. Yes, I'm right. I do have one or two points, and I would like to mention before the break, because I am afraid I will have to leave soon after that. I have to be at the office at a reasonably decent hour in the morning, you know. I have a couple of questions, some of them I've been accumulating over a period of time, and I also have, with John's indulgence, I want to say this one thing, that I have a rather lengthy article on contact cases coming out in a early issue of Fantastic Universe, which I think is quite likely to interest you and others. And I want to say that I'll be delighted to send you advance copies of it, in case you would like to comment on it.
Okay.
Now, I have two figures. One is this. You mentioned Deputy Sheriff's badge.
Mm-hmm.
Page 7. Yeah. You mentioned Deputy Sheriff's badge. Now, I don't deny, I don't mean to cast disparagement upon the Deputy Sheriff's badge in either San Bernardino County in California or elsewhere, but I do think you must have read about instances where these badges were issued to people who had some, let us say, some standing in the community, were reasonably well known, but who were not necessarily dedicated persons.
That's right.
I can think of one man, I'm not suggesting that it isn't so in your case, but I can think of one man, for example, in Arizona, who was a business partner of the previous Attorney General of the state of Arizona, who is no longer either an Attorney General or a lawyer. This gentleman is committed a few business dealings, and in the course of which he got the Deputy Sheriff's badge. I understand, by the way.
Well,
one thing came up, yes?
Let me tell you that this badge is not an honorary conferment. As John said, he probably has an honorary badge.
Very possible.
This badge is committed under bond. I'm a bonded deputy, the same as any other deputy.
You said that you were checked by federal and other agencies.
I said that they told me that my application or my information had to be confirmed by other branches of security. When you say they do, I mean the sheriff's office.
I think I could point out at this point that requires only a telephone call to be checked by all of the security agencies, since all of the information that one has is available to all of them. You could be quite thoroughly checked by FBI or by security in about 15 or 20 minutes by a single phone call.
In other words, by just finding out whether there is any information about the individual in their files, right?
To one agency?
Criminal record.
To one agency?
Not only that, if the person has ever worked in any security, in any aircraft plant, in any plant that is in any way under security, there is a complete dossier on that individual with this name.
Hans, you want to continue?
I have two or three other points. I understand that you felt that there's been some suggestion in an article in Fantastic Universe implying that, no, I'm sorry, not in Fantastic Universe, but in that Daily News article some time ago, implying that interest in ufology might make you suspect.
No, I since read that, and I want to tell John that where I read it was in Search magazine. I didn't read the article direct, but Palmer reprinted the article, and I assume he reprinted it rightly. And I did happen to get a copy of that Search magazine today, and John was right. He was referring to the people in the ships rather than the contacts.
Because Ben Gross has never at any time implied that
no, I didn't say Ben implied.
No, because I wanted to.
I said it appeared in his column.
Just on that point, among others, because I'm sure that Mr. Gross nor anybody else.
I know Ben has been out to that place.
Meant to imply that, you see, and that there was nothing personal. Just as there's nothing personal in any questions I may ask you, I'm sure there's nothing personal in any point that he may make. Sometimes in this civilian software intelligence bulletin, there is a reference to the two eminent brain surgeons who are not otherwise identified. Hit heaven about 1/3 of the way down. They are apparently told you that they had examined the brain. Here it is stated of the little men from Scully's saucer, specifically, and that from the appearance of these brains, it could be calculated that the little men were several hundred years old. Do you have any further comment on that?
Yes,
is this an accurate?
What I'm wondering is, what I'm trying to find out is who signed this article? Who wrote this article?
I think it's
that's the thing in my publication.
This civilian saucer intelligence bulletin is written by the directors of the organization.
How many directors and who?
Two of them. One is Lex Nevin, and the other gentleman is Ted Blocher.
Well, this seems to be an article about George Van Tassel and his wonderful rejuvenation machine. Sounds like Tom Swift and his airplane, the way they titled it.
May I just make this one comment, though? I do know the two gentlemen happen to be in the studio here this evening. No, the reason I say this, George, is that they based this article on tapes that they made of the party line.
Well, all I can say is that either they heard the tapes wrong or something, because there was no mention of Silas Newton on the tapes that I know of. And they brought that in here. And they also stated, which originated with a convicted swindler, Silas Newton. I'll inform you people right now, in case you're listening back there, that Silas Newton was not convicted. You have made a statement of libel here against him, which he could sue you for. You better find out what you're talking about when you print things in the paper.
Might I state this, that then True magazine is guilty of libel.
He has a $1 million lawsuit hanging over their head right now.
They gave very specific dates.
May I ask you if this is a direct quote? May I continue, rather?
May I interrupt just one moment, please?
Yes.
I would like to announce that any of the statements made by any of my guests this morning are not necessarily the opinions of the management of WOR, the Mutual Network, any of their affiliates, or yours truly, LJ. Continue, Hans.
Yes. May I continue? Is this a accurate quote in this reference to the statement they quote you as saying that you know how to build saucer motors, which I grant you may be a generalization?
Yes,
quote,
I do.
Any good mechanic can build them. They use no fuel. The administration is suppressing the truth because of the effect it would have on the oil companies.
Not on the oil companies, on the economy.
Huh?
Not on the oil companies, on the economy.
On the economy as a whole, rather than on the
let me start up here. I've never seen this article. I'm surprised people write these things about me and they never send me a copy of it. In fact, I never get this bulletin at all.
Yeah, but could you possibly answer, because could you possibly, this was not an accurate quote then?
Not on the oil companies, no. On the oil companies directly, yes. On the economy, that is the thing that they...
Why would the revelation of the methods used
Because it's a fuelless motor.
Power, let us say. Why would that affect the American economy rather than only a segment of it?
It would affect all economies.
All economies?
Yes.
How?
Because it is a fuelless motor. It doesn't require fuel.
But how would that affect our entire economy?
Well, the whole economy is based on power. Power is the source of all economy. Without transportation, communication, or power, there is no economy. There's no basis for economy. That is the basis of all economy.
Is it correct that you have described the planet as self-luminous?
Yes. Yes.
What is your authority for that?
Venus is self-luminous because of the field it generates around it. The field, the light you see that looks like a star is partly reflected light, but they also generate a field which is luminous around the planet. The planet itself isn't illuminated, but the field it generates is illuminated by the fact that the planet generates it.
Let me quote one paragraph from page 8, the second paragraph on page 8. I'm sorry to pull things out of context, and I think you appreciate the fact that I'm doing it only because of lack of time, and I'm sure you'll have every opportunity to discuss the article itself at greater length later in the...
Well, anyway, George has a copy, so you know,
I'd like to comment on this article myself, please.
Yeah, but I would like to comment on if the second paragraph is substantially true, a true copy, shall we say, a true rendition of what you say. Quote, however, the most significant tale now being told by Van Tassel, I'm sure that tale, you understand, tale is not meant in a derogatory sense, told by Van Tassel is the story of the longevity machine. It seems that it is by no means a machine, underlined using time fields, that the planet people are able to live so many centuries without aging. In parentheses, Methuselah, who was a Venusian, had one of these machines, but since it gradually wore out, his descendants lived shorter lives than he did. You don't believe this? There's lots of people who say it, so. End of parentheses. Van Tassel knows how to build this machine, and he knows the theory of its operation. As we age, the electron orbits in our atoms become eccentric, and this machine rejuvenates us by restoring them to circularity. Quote, in parentheses, as anyone with a smattering of chemistry or physics will recognize, this is Aaron Balderdash. Closes parentheses.
This whole article is Aaron Balderdash.
I quoted both the editorial comments as well as the actual, I presume, direct quote. But are the direct quotes correctly attributed to you? Are they?
These are not anything here right. No, nothing here is...
Have you referred to Methuselah as a Venusian?
No, I never referred to any such a thing. This is put in here with a vein of ridicule. This is all written in a vein of ridicule. This whole thing is written in a vein of ridicule. Back here it says the Adamski story is true, and then in quotes it says anyone who has studied this knows it must be false. Look, I talked to an Air Force Major General who personally told me he had witnessed the motion pictures taken from an airplane circling over Adamski's contact of the entire contact.
Could you give us his name, please, or write it down?
No, I won't give you his name.
Could you give it to John?
Can
you ever give a name and address, Mr. Van Tassel?
Certainly. I'm
afraid I have to...
let me go over this article. Let me say something.
Yes, but let me finish first.
Go ahead, Hans, please.
After all, I'm being attacked on the paper by you and by somebody else, and everybody on the attack side gets the
They will not, George.
Mr. Van Tassel, may I say one thing, make one thing very clear? I'm here, I happen to be rather interested in this field. I'm interested in publishing material dealing with this field. I am perfectly prepared, as I said earlier this evening or this morning, whatever it is, to publish anything at all on this subject, but I must be reasonably convinced as a research person, as a research worker, and as a person of some objectivity, that there is some substance of proof. With all due deference to your undoubted sincerity, with all due deference to your undoubted anxiety to serve humanity, I must say this, and I say this quite deliberately without in any way attempting to be personal, that I am not convinced. In fact, I'm not only am I not convinced, I'm a little confused by some of the things that you are not only credited with saying, but that you have said even here tonight.
I should think you would be confused. You've been reading this article.
I've been reading quite a number of things.
This article would confuse anybody. I can show you the deliberate misstatement. It says Kehoe spoke at the 1956 convention, and Kehoe and Ruppelt, neither one were there. It says both of them spoke there.
Mr. Van Tassel.
These statements are absolute false.
Mr. Van Tassel. May I should explain just one thing. I have been in research work. I am accustomed to analyzing and evaluating all sorts of contradictory statements and reports. I do not accept any one statement necessarily without checking and double-checking. Mm-hmm. I grant you that these people are perhaps not a little less than charitable on the subject of your alleged or actual experiences, but I have found, on the whole, and I say this quite deliberately, I have found them to be factual and unemotional and quite objective in the report of UFO sightings and UFO events.
You mean the people
where they may depart from you in pure objectivity is in their reaction to alleged or only partially proven contact cases. And there is where I frankly join them in expressing a certain amount of skepticism without, however, being necessarily saying that you ain't this or you ain't that, you know.
May I just interrupt a moment? I think that George Van Tassel brought up a point here, that there was a misstatement in the December 15th edition of the Civilian Saucer Intelligence publication. And on May 1st, that is the bulletin that I have in front of me now, dated May 1st, 1957, they have made a correction, and they make this statement here. Page 6, we were in error in stating that Kehoe spoke at Van Tassel's Space Convention. To his credit, Kehoe has never had, and never will have, any dealings with Van Tassel. This statement that Ruppelt appeared may likewise be erroneous.
To his credit, Kehoe has never had.
Yes, but none of
Kehoe say that? Did Kehoe say that himself? I'll see him in Washington Saturday. I want to make sure.
In other words, they made a correction.
I have a letter from him, by the way, from NISAP, which includes me, and it makes him an honorary consultant member, in fact. And he happens to be at the head of it, so I don't know which one of these articles are right, the one you printed or what he sent me. But what I'm getting at is this whole article is an attack. But this is based on your tapes, as you say, this article.
I didn't write the article.
No.
No, you see, there was also at
you see, here by implication again, this vicious thing says he has a background of 28 years in the aircraft industry, having worked in flying and flight test work for Douglas, Howard, Hughes, and Lockheed. Then in quotes again, implying to the people that I'm a crook, it might be interesting to check up on this history. Why didn't the people check up on the history before they wrote the article? That's what I can't figure out, because anybody is welcome to check into my history in the aircraft business. The FBI knows it completely. I was in on research and things during World War II, and they know me from here on down.
George, in all fairness to you and to everybody here this morning, you haven't had an opportunity of reading this. I wasn't familiar with that. We're way past our coffee break. I think we'll take a brief break at this time, and we'll be back if you fellas can gobble up those delicious sandwiches from Carnegie Delicatessen and Restaurant in about 15 minutes, and that's tough to do. LongJohn with the party line. We're talking this morning with George Van Tassel, who operates Giant Rock Spaceport and Airport in California, and he has been the host at 4 annual spacecraft conventions. We have with us Dan Fry, the author of the book entitled The White Sands Incident. And in this book, he tells the story of a trip which he made in a flying saucer from a desert spot on the White Sands Proving Ground in New Mexico to New York City and back in a period of 32 minutes. We have with us Jules St. Germain, the attorney from Lynbrook, Long Island, and Ted Blocher, one of the directors of the Civilian Saucer Intelligence groups in the city of New York. Not groups, but these groups, right? All right, Ted?
Right.
Feeling proper? Right. Thank you. Prior to our coffee break, we were discussing George Van Tassel's rejuvenating machine and the conoscope. Is that the term that you to identify conoscope?
Yeah, that's what they call it.
Mm-hmm. And before we get into the discussion, I would just like to read one more telegram. We have received a number of them. One in particular addressed to LongJohn and signed the listener. Jules is decidedly unpleasant. He operates with insinuation and an innuendo. This is not a trial, and that's in quotes.
I'm awfully sorry to be unpleasant to the listener. I'm trying to be very direct and avoid insinuations, but possibly because of my very definite and deep feelings on the matter, I'm letting my emotions run away with myself. But I don't want it to be a trial, John, but I think by questions and answers, questions with direct answers, we might get to the truth of this matter a little more rapidly.
All right. Ted Blocher, as one of the directors of Civilian Saucer Intelligence, you have published in the Civilian Saucer Intelligence Bulletin many statements that you allege were made by George Van Tassel. Is that true?
No, we don't allege that they were made. We state that they were made at his previous lectures in New York City last fall and over your program.
Is that the lecture that was given at Pythian Temple?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right, fine. Now, George, during the coffee break, I know that you were bothered with 3 or 4 phone calls, people calling in wanting to talk to you, that is, personal friends of yours, and you were trying to enjoy the good sandwiches from Carnegie Delicatessen and Restaurant and also the delicious coffee, so I don't know whether you had an opportunity to read that bulletin.
Well, I just glanced at it, John, and then I was looking at this CSI bulletin for supposed to be a Civilian Saucer Intelligence. I'm still looking for the intelligence because they make statements without investigation.
Mm-hmm.
Here, the title of another one is West Coast Contact Claimants Tell a Phony Sounding Tale.
Are they referring to you in that article?
No, they're not referring to me. They're referring to a man named Todd. Well, I happen to know that they didn't investigate this thing. There's evidence in this man's backyard where this gold ball came down of the breaking of brush, as it was in Dan Fry's case, except in this case, many people saw the broken brush, and they also saw the sharp line of demarcation where the vegetation was burned by the field.
2 points, please.
What's that?
May I make 2 points?
Yeah.
Point 1, broken branches is no indication of a saucer landing in my book. Point 2 is we did not investigate this case personally. We did not write it. This case was submitted to us by a person who did investigate at first hand and is written by her.
A member of your organization?
That's right, in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. George, supposing that we comment instead of on the bulletin in its entirety, supposing we comment on some of the statements that they made about you that you don't agree with, I think that would give you an opportunity.
Well, I'm not critical of the statements they make about me. It's the implications and insinuations which tend to lead people to believe something other than what is true. Because they said I operate a small airport at Giant Rock. Now, if they had ever come to Giant Rock, they would have found out that it's the largest private field airport in the world. In the California desert. It isn't a small airport. It has a runway 1,600 feet longer than the Navy base next door to it.
Point taken.
Right.
It's a tremendous airport.
It says he has a background of 28 years in the aircraft industry, having worked in flying and flight test work for Douglas, Howard Hughes, and Lockheed. And then in quotes it says it might be interesting to check up on his history. Well, that was the thing we should have checked up on before they wrote the article. Because the history is there, everybody knows it, the government knows it, and everybody else.
Were you implying, Ted, in that comment that you doubted Mr. Van Tassel's statement about his background?
Not at all. We were simply stating there that it would be interesting to find out his background. However, this article is not written on your background, Mr. Van Tassel. No. It's written on the comments you made in your lectures and over LongJohn's show.
That's right.
However, the article does refer to his background. I think it would occur to me that there's a very plain insinuation there. I don't know whether my thought or opinions on it would coincide with anyone else.
I would
agree. To me, it would give a very clear insinuation.
Of course, Mr. Van Tassel has stated that the government knows about him. I think I heard him say the other night he'd been investigated by the FBI and various other government agencies.
Yeah.
My question to you, Mr. Van Tassel, is, do you know what conclusion the FBI reached about you?
Yes, I do, but I'm not privileged to tell you.
You mean they've allowed you to see their confidential files?
I didn't say
anything to that effect. I said that I am not privileged by their request to tell you what they arrived at.
Well, are you telling me the FBI investigated you and then told you the result of the investigation?
No, they didn't tell me the result of the investigation. They asked me not to reveal what they came out for primarily.
Oh, well, I mean, as far as the result of the investigation about you, you do not know what it is. Is that right?
No, except that by the reaction from the investigation, I know that they found nothing of anything that was out of order.
That would be an assumption, right?
Well, no, I think that's a fair assumption, in as much as the argument started over the fact that he was getting a deputy sheriff badge, and he did get the badge. I think this would be evidence that the investigation is reasonably satisfactory.
Oh, would you say the argument was an argument about Mr. Van Tassel giving him the deputy sheriff's badge?
No, the question as to what length he had been investigated and what the results of that were. If he applied for a deputy sheriff's badge and was investigated and was granted the badge, I think it's a fair assumption that the investigation was at least reasonably favorable. Also, if Mr. Van Tassel has ever worked in any aircraft plant, he has definitely been investigated by the FBI. And also here, the fact that he was employed is in itself a fairly conclusive proof that the investigation was satisfactory.
Well, I would only say this, and I think you brought it up, Mr. Fry, that the investigation can be made in about 10 or 15 minutes, and I assume the basis would be to check to see if there's a criminal record.
Not necessarily. This is true only if you are going to work for the first time. But if you're going to work for the first time for any aircraft plant, you must furnish yourself a complete dossier of your past history, going back at least to your birth, and usually going back into the lives of your parents. I'm familiar with it because I've been through the process many times.
I don't want to belabor the point. Let me ask one question. Does anyone here know, in San Bernardino County in California, if that's what it is, precisely what investigation is made of their own knowledge, or don't you know?
Yes, I know, because the sheriff's office told me.
Well,
that you had to be approved by every agency of security for investigation.
Well, I'll drop a line if I may. You would mind to verify that?
That's the
gentlemen, let's get into the subject at hand. Would you like to discuss
the
bulletin
say here that I am also the impresario of annual spacecraft inventions at Giant Rock, and these are now tremendous affairs attracting many thousands. And then it goes on to say that Ruppelt and Keogh were among the speakers in '56. Well, they retracted that statement in the next issue, which proves that they published something or were gullible to something, I don't know what. Whatever it might have been, they had to retract the statement, which proved that they didn't investigate that either.
One of my favorite newspapers in the city of New York happens to be the New York Daily News, and I notice from time to time that they have a paragraph devoted to an apology, which is in the form of a correction.
That's right.
This can happen, I think, you'll agree, in any publication.
I haven't seen any retraction of the one in the Los Angeles Examiner, though. They said that Frank Scully and George Adamski spoke at this year's convention, and neither one of them were there, except Frank Scully came in late that night and talked to me for a while.
I know, I spoke with
He
Frank.
didn't talk with the people at the convention.
You want to make a point,
Yes,
Ted?
I'd just like to cover the point that Mr. Van Tassel brought up about our mention of Kehoe. We certainly were in error, and I think it can be traced right back to you, Mr. Van Tassel.
No, it can't.
Yes, this statement came from the Los Angeles Herald Express, and I can't give you the date right offhand because I don't.
It doesn't matter.
But it was issued by yourself prior to the spacecraft convention of last year, and written in the past tense as if it had taken place already.
Oh, no. The only reference I made to the press about Kehoe or Ruppelt was my both. I know both of them. Whether they want to admit knowing me or not, they admit it to my face.
Is there a doubt? Is there any reason why they should want to admit not knowing you?
They treat me very respectfully to my face. They always have, and talk like.
What about behind your back? Is there any evidence that they've been
nothing
using
except
a knife?
what other people print. Other people print things.
Such as? Can you give us any specific references? We don't quote Ruppelt or Kehoe in any criticism of you.
In this retraction of this statement, in the next issue, you read yourself here the fact that he said he wouldn't be associated with me or something like that.
Mr. Van Tassel, this is our own editorial comment to which we are permitted.
Well, then he didn't say it.
If you read that carefully, you'll see what we said. We said to his credit, and this is our own editorial.
Well, I think actually that this proves the point that this was not, originally it was stated that it was not anything that Kehoe or Ruppelt said that was derogatory to this Van Tassel. It was what people printed.
That's right. May I read the quote, please?
Yes, go ahead.
We were in error in stating that Kehoe spoke at Van Tassel's Space Convention. To his credit, and they're referring to Kehoe at the present, in this particular instance, to his credit, Kehoe has never had and never will have any dealings with Van Tassel. Now, this is not a quote from Kehoe. Is that right, Ted?
This is what Kehoe told us when we spoke to him one time this spring before the publication of newsletter number 7. We asked him specifically if he had appeared because we found out after the newsletter number 6 had come out that we were in error.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to check on it. And Kehoe said no, he had never had any dealings with Mr. Van Tassel.
Yeah, but this says, and he never will have. That leaves a false impression because never is a long time.
Well, you asked Major Kehoe about that.
I intend to. I'm going to Washington Saturday. I'll make it a point to see him.
Fine.
I think that you,
will be very
I don't
interested to
want
know
to
the
mention
results
this unless you want to. Would you like to mention on the air this morning what your purpose is in going to Washington, or would you rather not?
I have no reason to hide it. I wrote to the president for an appointment for the 22nd at his convenience on that
You're
day.
referring to President Eisenhower.
That's right. The president is President Eisenhower.
Well, I mean,
there's no other president.
Yes, there are. There's President of General Motors, President of different organizations.
But I so far have not received an answer from the White House, which leads me to believe that the way I wrote the letter let them know I would be there in Washington anyway, and probably upon a phone call will be fitted into his schedule sometime during that day.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the recent sickness and so forth, I suppose all their schedules were upset. So they certainly have had plenty of time to answer my request and tell me no if they were going to turn it down.
And they feel that you'll be in town. I mean, this is your feeling that due to the fact they know that you'll be in Washington that day, that they'll possibly try to work you into the president's schedule.
I don't feel that I'm being brushed off or ignored. In the event that I am, I will certainly publish it to that effect.
Speaking of the president, Mr. Van Tassel, possibly my memory is wrong. Please correct me if it is. In one of the proceedings, was a statement made that a certain fictional story, seemingly fictional story, about a space visitor visiting the president. Did you say that was true?
Did I what?
a certain story published in either the American magazine or Cosmopolitan, I'm not sure, concerning a visit of a spaceman to the president. Do you say that it was not fiction but the truth?
That's right.
You said at tonight's lecture that the president knows the inside story on the spacecraft and has conversed with spacemen himself.
Definitely. The president
You go on record as saying that.
That's right. I've said it in my lectures for years.
Okay. This has been mentioned.
Nobody has ever denied it.
If I may just comment on this, this statement has been made by 5 or 6 people who have appeared on the program. Of course, that does not necessarily mean that this is a true fact. It may be just something that they're assuming.
The interesting part was
close enough to where he was at the time he came to Palm Springs to know what was going on.
Is this the hangar number 5 story?
I don't know what hangar numbers involved. I've heard 15 hangar numbers.
I know, it changes each time.
I know
can you tell us about that a
lined
little bit?
up for miles in front of Edwards Air Force Base trying to find out what was going on, and the personnel coming back off of furloughs had their furloughs extended and were not permitted to even come back on the base.
When was the date of this, Mr. Van Tassel?
I don't know the exact date.
You were out there?
It was at the time the president flew to Palm Springs a couple of years ago.
But you don't know the date?
Not exactly, no. I would have to look it up.
This has been brought up on the program before, not only by Mr. Van Tassel, but by other guests.
The interesting part would be who started the story and who copied it. Now, for instance, when Howard Menzies is on the air, I noticed that he says many things that Mr. Van Tassel said originally. I think Mr. Van Tassel may deserve the credit, if I may use that word, in quotations, for starting these stories. But the story that appeared in the magazine, I don't know if you remember which one, Mr. Van Tassel. I happened to look it up because I noticed in the proceedings you said it was not fiction but true.
That's right.
Do you remember what magazine this was offhand?
The American magazine.
The American?
January the 1st of 1955, I think.
And that story was?
55 was 56.
Do you recall just briefly what that story was?
It was a story written about a person who appeared before one of the president's secretaries or some emissary of the White House connected with the president and asked for permission to talk to the president, and it was the president was brought into him and he disappeared after the conversation right there in the room, and
the space person disappeared?
Yeah, the space person just
vanished?
Just vanished.
Mm-hmm. And this is the truth, Mr. Van Tassel?
This is, it is true that the president has had visitors.
No, didn't you say that story was not
right.
fiction but the truth? I asked you.
What I meant by that was that the incident had occurred. Whether that particular story is a replica written by someone who knew it or not, I don't know.
May I ask you how you know that is the truth?
Because I have a way of knowing things.
Yeah, well, I assume you must have a way of knowing things. Would it be asking too much to tell us how you know it?
Yes, it would. Oh, because it wouldn't make any difference.
The veil of silence invariably falls.
May I ask you this question, George?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't care to answer it, that's perfectly all right. Are you implying that this information that you have in reference to this alleged visit of a person from another planet to the President of the United States, did you get this information telepathically?
You could say that, yes.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be as close as you could say it.
All right.
Here's another point here where they quoted...
when you say they, we're talking about Civilian Saucer Intelligence Bulletin.
Yes, Civilian Saucer Intelligence Bulletin, where they quoted from my first book, I wrote a Flying Saucer, a couple of the messages, which don't make any difference, except the information in them came true exactly as they said it would, and we have many witnesses of that, including the newspapers.
Is there anything inherently wrong with our quotation?
No, there's nothing wrong with the quotation, as far as I can see.
Good.
But underneath that, you add, judging by this solemn claptrap,
this is our editorializing again.
Yes, the research section had hitherto set Van Tassel down as an honest but deluded soul, revering as super-earthly wisdom the inventions of his own subconscious. Now here, without knowing me, without having ever met me, they are judging my
This is not true. We had not met you. This is true. We had heard you over LongJohn's show, and we had seen you in person, and heard you give forth with your comments at lectures in New York.
And
it's not based on nothing.
Mr. Van Tassel.
I just put one word. I wanted to say, John, that I have never shared CSI's opinion, if they hadn't said that you're a deluded soul. I think you're an intelligent man. I think you're very clever. I think you know just what you're doing.
That's exactly
just like
right.
you tried
I
to get
certainly do, or I wouldn't be here doing it.
Continue, George.
So this goes on to tell about our flying trip and
Why
so
don't you
forth.
read the last sentence of that paragraph, Mr. Van Tassel?
Oh, I didn't know I left one off.
Yes. However, the gentleman's current activities have given us a different
Oh,
impression.
yes.
Therefore, we no longer think you're a deluded soul.
That's right. They go on down here further, in the article.
Let's stop right here.
Mhm.
Did you discuss this possibly while I was coming down here? I think just as I was coming in, you were talking about this.
What was that?
I think you covered it tonight in your lecture. No, it was on the broadcast. You said that you don't solicit funds for this
That's right.
machine that you're building out. Well, it's not really a machine, is it? But I want to know, you don't turn away contributions, do you?
No. In fact, I make more
You do
contributions
encourage
than anybody
interest.
else.
You do encourage interest in it through your lectures and through your book, don't you?
No, I didn't bring up the rejuvenation thing tonight in the lecture.
No,
I
not
don't
tonight.
bring it up unless
You
it's
did
brought
last
out.
fall. You did last fall at 50 and Temple, and you
That
did
was
on
because
LongJohn
it was
show.
brought up in the question and answer period where somebody asked me about it.
Right. In other words, interest had been stimulated. They knew about it in order to ask about it.
Certainly there are
Fine.
people who know about it, and they brought up the question.
Mr. Van Tassel, I thought you had changed your opinion about soliciting funds. Now, you say you don't solicit funds. I'm going to quote directly from the proceedings, which appears in every issue, I believe, the same thing. Being most urgent that the research laboratory building be completed and the experimental unit put in operation at the earliest date possible, the trustees of the College of Universal Wisdom at Yucca Valley, California, earnestly solicit its patrons and friends to contribute generously to the building fund and to offer suggestions as to contacts that might be made with possible donors. You still say you don't solicit funds, Mr.
No,
Van
I
Tassel?
don't. That says the trustees solicit the funds.
In other words...
Didn't we hear before that the
Now,
funds
don't
all
let me
went into
answer
the
the
same...
question. Just ask the question and
wait.
butt in. Don't let me answer the question.
Let George answer that question, please. George?
It says the trustees earnestly solicit, and furthermore, it states that the fund is for what it is for. That the contributions are for the research in the building.
Aren't you one of the trustees, Mr. Van
Yeah.
Tassel? And the trustees solicit, but you tell us that you do not solicit.
Could I interject?
Well, I do it.
I would like to
I'll
just
drop
make,
the subject.
no, I'd like to make one comment, Jules.
Let me comment here.
Go ahead,
first.
please do.
This subject, it seems like Jules is so bound that I'm out to make money on this thing. I can show you my bank account on this organization where I contribute more to it than anybody else in it.
I'd be more interested in seeing the organization's bank account and the expenditures withdrawn and the money taken in.
Not that it's any of your business, but we donated $9,000 worth of property to start with.
You donated it to an organization whose bank account you control. It was the most generous gesture.
May I ask about that donation? Was this donation part of your land at Giant Rock?
No, it's part of our land, our private ranch. It had nothing to do with
private
that.
ranch. In other words, it didn't amount to
10
money.
acres.
It didn't amount to any passing of money, but it was strictly land that was donated.
We donated 10 acres of land. It is legally recorded. I showed John the paper the night before that. And it's recorded so that it cannot be sold by anybody, including me, under the constitutional law which prohibits the sale of any property that is so stated.
Just one question, really in the form of a statement, and if you desire to consider the question, you may do so, Jules. Isn't it true, I mean in all fairness to George, isn't it true that if I, LongJohn, become a member of an organization that's incorporated as a non-profit organization, if I go out and suggest to the public in general that we need money to keep this organization going, does that necessarily mean that I am asking for contributions to me as an individual?
It depends. The basis of if it's a corporation with
A
nothing
non-profit
more or less
corporation.
than a corporate entity of which you are the principal, I say in all common sense, John, you are seeking contributions for yourself. But here, Mr. Van Tassel has stated not only he, as I recall, but at least left me with the impression that he, as an agent or individually, was not soliciting money for the building unit or the building fund or the experimental unit. That was the answer to Mr. Jensen's letter, I believe.
Could I say just a word here? I have a fairly clear recollection on how this thing started. And it's my recollection that the discussion started with the rejuvenation machine, and I believe it was Van's statement that he had not solicited any funds for the construction of the rejuvenation machine.
Yes.
What did you mean by centuries?
Well,
just a figure of speech?
No, John. In a matter of study and effort in the quiet of the desert and in the process of following instructions from these people, I have the ability to know of several previous existences prior to this one.
Mm-hmm. Other incarnations.
Yes, you can call them that, although that name is definitely, that word is definitely misunderstood.
Mm-hmm. All right, it was just that I thought when I was out in the control booth, I heard some statement like that, and I wasn't quite sure.
You were entirely right.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry if I misnamed your machine, Mr. Van Tassel. The secondary machine. Tangible evidence to me would be one scientist connected with any reputable university who saw that lizard's head grow back underneath his eyes.
I might say that this man who had charge of this particular portion of the research is employed as a reputable scientist.
He's connected with you?
No, he's not connected with me. He works another place.
I assume he's worked with you.
He works in industry.
So has he worked with you, sir?
No, he's never worked with me.
I mean, in conjunction with you? I don't mean
only on
employed.
That particular piece of apparatus.
No, I'm talking about somebody not connected with you in any way.
Well, I don't know of any scientist that knows what we're doing outside of him. He's the only one that works on that is a legitimate electronics, or actually he works on what they call electronic brain. That's his particular type of work.
If I should write, sir, to the head of the science department of Stanford University, the University of California, will you show to them this lizard's head growing back?
It would depend entirely upon who the individual was, whether I would show them anything.
I don't know who is the head of the science
department. Well, I don't either. That's why I wouldn't agree to that statement, because I don't know who the head of the organization might be. He might belong to the subversive forces that are trying to take over this country, for all I know.
Well,
I'm not just going to show it because I've got a title.
Well, who would you suggest, a disinterested person? How about LongJohn? Do you show it to him? John, would you like to see a lizard's head grow back?
Well, I don't think I'd have much knowledge on the subject.
You can see a lizard's head grow on
pictures. There's no point in trying to prove anything to you on the subject, because the minute that somebody said they had seen it and so forth, you would start tearing them apart just like you're tearing me apart.
I'll take John. Will you show it to John?
I'm a qualified citizen. I say it. Isn't that sufficient?
No, it isn't.
What is the difference between some other citizens?
Frankly, Mr. Van Tassel, I don't believe the word you're saying. I don't want to be impolite.
I don't care whether you do or not. I'm not here to impress you.
But would you show it to LongJohn? You're not answering the question.
I was intended, when John was out there, if I hadn't been so busy and he hadn't been so busy, I fully intended to show him the equipment.
I'm going to just say this in all fairness to George, although I didn't see the equipment. When I arrived out there on Thursday night, on Friday night, prior to the time of the convention, I had the opportunity of speaking with George Van Tassel. I talked to him for maybe about 5 or 10 minutes, and I tried to arrange to get an interview with him. He said, John, it will be impossible during the next 2 days. If you're in town Monday after the convention, I'll be glad to do an interview on tape with you. And he did say to me this. He said, John, while you're here, I am going to show you the rejuvenating machine. You did not say the secondary machine. You used the term the rejuvenating machine. I said, can I see it operate? And I think he mentioned to me something about a period of 28 days, it seems, that it takes for this machine to start to function. In other words, I don't know if you press a button. This is just my idea that if you press a button, it'll take 28 days before it starts to function.
Does that have something to do with the lunar period?
It does, exactly.
Very frankly, I did not have 28 days to spare, And to see the machine itself, I was interested in seeing it, but I didn't press the issue, and I didn't even ask George again, because by the time I got through fighting the rain, the wind, and the cold weather in this wonderful desert out there, I was too tired, and I didn't care if George Van Tassel had a rejuvenating machine or not.
John, can I put you on the spot a little
You
bit?
certainly may.
Well, I'm just going to ask you this question now.
Yes.
Do you believe that if he showed you this machine and you saw the lizard under it, and he smashed its head, that you wouldn't have seen it grow back?
Well, let me say this. You're asking me a hypothetical question.
Would you have bought it if you did see?
I don't know. I think I'm of a very suspicious nature. I have been around with magicians and pseudo mind readers that I don't know, and I don't mean to be unkind to my guest George Van Tassel tonight, but if the lizard was produced in its original form, I possibly would be amazed at the time, and as I was flying back on the plane, I'd start to say, now wait a moment, didn't he give me a little misdirection? Isn't there a possibility that he palmed a live lizard and put it over there and switched to something? I'm being fair with you, George. I'm telling you.
That's what I say. Proof is something that...
You're also getting back to the original point that there is no such thing. In other words, in answer to your question, I would not come back on the air and make the statement that I saw this operate.
This is answering my question. That he claims that there would be no point in demonstrating this because no one would believe it even if they saw it.
Trying to admit
John, I tried to tell you earlier in the program that the reason I object to showing this to anybody is because in the research we found that where the time phase is exceeded by the differential of these two fields, that disintegration results. Now this in the hands of anybody is a deadly thing because matter can be annihilated. And we didn't do this purposely. It happened strictly by accident. And for that reason, this entire research was dropped owing to the detrimental factor that we encountered because, in fact, they didn't expect us to have this occur when they gave us the data on this particular apparatus.
Well, has this entire research been dropped entirely now, Mr. Van Tassel?
It hasn't been dropped except that we've proven the point. All we used it for to begin with was to prove the point that we could establish these fields, and all we've got to do is clock them in relation to the Earth, and then we can apply this to humans or anything else.
And so I understand now, tell me if I'm wrong, that the secondary machine you described, which is used on the lizard, is entirely different and apart from the rejuvenation machine?
Definitely. And the one I mentioned showing to John, I was going to show him this when I showed him the photographs of, too, because I have complete confidence in him. And the one that I referred to, I think if you remember right, I told you the rejuvenation machine, the large one, I could only show you in a toothpick model.
That's right.
And then if I made up out of toothpicks glued together because there are so many forces involved in the operation of this particular function, and we're clocking against the Earth's rotation and its orbit. And in order to keep track of the directional forces involved in the function of this apparatus, you have to have a model to work with. You can't work on paper.
May I ask this then? Do I understand correctly that the rejuvenation machine now is entirely theoretical? Is that right?
It's entirely theoretical. It hasn't been made yet.
Now,
That's right.
John, going back to last fall, your recollection must be better than mine. When Mr. Van Tassel was on, wasn't it your impression that there was a small rejuvenation machine in operation at that time? Was it identical?
No, you misunderstood.
So let John answer that question.
I will say this, in trying to be as fair as possible, and I hope that my memory is serving me correctly this morning, I definitely feel that the statement was made on the program that there was a miniature rejuvenation machine that was made from plans that were given to George from somebody from another planet or from outer space or something. This machine was taken into some part of the desert, and in turn that there were two brain surgeons with him, and I don't remember whether he stated anybody else was with him or not at the time. And there was a lizard with a crushed head. Since then, George has mentioned that they crushed the head of this lizard in order to conduct this experiment. This lizard was then placed in or on top or on the side or nearby the so-called rejuvenation machine, and in a matter of seconds, the head was restored back to its original shape and form, and it jumped away into the rocks or something like that. Now, that is the way I remember it, but I must admit that in doing this show 6 nights a week, I could be mistaken.
Well, my recollection is the same as you, except for one thing. I do not recall Mr. Van Tassel mentioning the 2 brain surgeons in connection with the lizard. Now, in all fairness,
that's true.
I think that he mentioned it in connection with
here's the thing that I think possibly has John confused, is the fact that at that time I may not have specified so definitely between these 2 pieces of apparatus.
That's quite true. I don't think
I know that I never made such a statement.
Between the primary and the secondary machine, that's not a point of argument.
Except that I had thought that Mr. Van Tassel had claimed that he had one, a miniature one, an actual operation, a rejuvenation machine.
No, this, if anything, you could have to call it a regeneration.
Going around last fall.
Well, you may have heard the stories along.
Third hand.
Stories go around like this stuff here, to the extent that you believe what you read or hear, it gets mixed in your mind with 1,000 other things.
I have a suggestion, and I sincerely hope that you will agree with my suggestion. We have only a very short period of time left. And if you don't agree, you can just say so. We have 2 gentlemen here, one George Van Tassel and one Jules St. Germain. Both of them have different opinions about each other. This is quite obvious if you've been listening to the program. 5, 10, 15. I would say that if we started exactly, which will be a minute from now, 10 minutes after 5, and if we carry on for 25 minutes after 5, that would be a period of 15 minutes. I would like to divide that into 2 sections. I would like to have Mr. Van Tassel have the opportunity of taking 7.5 minutes, and I would like Jules St. Germain to have the opportunity of taking 7.5 minutes, of recapping your opinions, your statements, or anything you want to say. Are you agreeable to that?
Certainly.
Now, in order to decide who's going to talk first, I have a coin here. Would you please, Dan, will you flip the coin? What did you take, heads or tails?
Heads.
Heads. All right. Well, I think you've lost.
That's right.
So you start.
No,
he gets the choice.
I get the choice.
Oh, the choice? Oh, either way.
Van Tassel, you're on it.
You want me to go first? Okay.
I
have nothing whatsoever to say about Jules or what he professes or the analysis he makes of our proceedings or our research. It doesn't mean a thing to me what he thinks or what he says about it. He's entitled to his opinion, and he certainly expressed it. And we are going ahead with our research. We're going ahead with our purpose exactly as we have. We don't intend to be interfered with if we can help it, and we have nothing to hide. At any time, I do everything possible within the basic structure of our laws, and if I do anything different, it's because I didn't know the law. We are registered with the state as a business organization. We pay taxes to the county. We get building permits when we build buildings. Certainly, if I had anything to hide, I wouldn't be running a bank account, because that is an open record to both other people in the bank and the canceled checks that go back to the people that wrote them, and so forth. That's the last thing you would have if you were trying to do something crooked, is have a bank account. As I said before, the principles involved in which we are working with are prior to atomic energy. They are the energies from which atoms are born and from which planets and solar systems and galaxies function. And we have printed some of these pictures in the big book of proceedings and in our issues that come out monthly. Now, I have nothing to convert anybody to. I don't care if anybody ever believes in flying saucers. I know that nobody on this earth at any time here or hereafter will ever change my mind about the fact that I saw and went aboard a flying saucer. I am a realist of the first water, and what occurs to me is my experience, and nobody can take it away from me. These things, just because Lindbergh flew the Atlantic, that don't mean everybody flew it, and those who
read in the papers that he flew it certainly should doubt it if they are like Jules, that the man ever flew the Atlantic, because they didn't fly it, and he didn't furnish proof to anybody that he did fly it. These particular things are always subject to controversy. Now, in operating a public airport, my wife and my daughters and myself live in a goldfish bowl from morning to night, as Dan can tell you, or as John can tell you when he was out there. In fact, the night of the convention, I had to sleep in a friend's trailer who towed it down from Oregon because we'd even given our bed to somebody else. Our goldfish existence out there naturally is subject to criticism. I could find plenty of fault with anybody if I had the privilege of investigating their daily life in their own homes. We live outdoors practically, except we sleep inside during bad weather, and we live next to nature, and we try to follow natural laws. As anybody out there that has ever been to the Rock can tell you, they'll testify that we don't charge them for camping. We don't make charges every time somebody turns around. They get free water at all times. There's no charge for the use of the toilet facilities or anything on the property. The only time anybody pays for anything out there is if they buy a sandwich or if they get a cup of coffee or something where they get something in return. They pay a very nominal price for it. We are not trying to make money. We long ago lost interest in making money or having an excess of money. My wife and three daughters are all married. My three daughters are married, and we have 3 grandchildren and another one coming in August. We are open at all times to anybody on the East Coast here who cares to come out there and stay on the place. It won't cost you a cent. Stay on the place. Investigate as long as you like. Investigate my wife, my daughters, myself, the bank account, anything you wish to investigate. But don't sit back here and make decisions without knowing what you're making decisions about, like some of these telegrams have done. I invite you out to investigate. That's all I can do. I'm not going to show you research that, to my knowledge, if I had known what it would do, I never would have discussed it at any time. Unfortunately, I discussed this particular piece of apparatus prior to the time we found out about the disintegrating force of it. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't care if it ever operates again, because I happen to know what it'll do. I know that when there is nothing but a few particles of skin of a whole lizard left, that it's pretty annihilating force. And since it is possible to exceed the differential of this phasing, I'm certainly not going to monkey with it on the chance that I might eliminate myself. And I've got a lot of things I want to do around here. And now that I'm a grandfather and free of caring for my children who are married, I certainly intend to devote the rest of my life to the progression of humanity, and any of the advanced things that we can develop, as I said in the proceedings several times, are going to be presented freely to humanity for their own benefit. We have no ulterior motive. We do require money to operate on because we are operating under a money system. Fortunately, we don't have to beg. I spent 20 years in the air game, and I had the intelligence to look forward to a rainy day. And we don't have to beg from people, and we don't have to take their lift.
You have a minute left, Mr. Van Zandt.
Well, all I can say is that I want to thank WOR, the station, the owners, the sponsors, and LongJohn, all of the many friends we have made here in New York, and all of the experiences we have had that we treasure. I want to thank all of the people for the many things they've done for us, both on this trip and the last one. I don't know when I'll be back again, but I certainly will look up LongJohn if I come back.
Well, thank you very much. Do you want to take over Jules, please?
Yes,
Jules St. Germain, the attorney from Lynbrook, Long Island.
I'd like to say, first of all, that my remarks tonight are not intended to discredit in any way any serious study of ufology. What I do object to is those individuals who will enter the field and attempt to make money under false pretenses at the expense of gullible individuals. Mr. Van Tassel is a man who is very personable. I have nothing against him personally, but I have the most extreme abhorrence in what he is doing and what he has been doing. And I think that his primary purpose is to make a dollar and a big dollar. What he said tonight about a $15,000 donation, about having 10,000 letters, convinces me that the potentials of getting suckers is very, very great, and he's well on his way. I only hope that I can stop him in the few minutes I've been have to speak. Now, Mr. Van Tassel on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning spoke about the HO letters. Briefly, I want to state that indeed was a temporary deception which I voluntarily brought to light myself. That is very far removed from the type of hoax that Mr. Van Tassel has been perpetrating. He has compared my message to Hitler. I'd rather compare Mr. Van Tassel's message to Hitler and compare him with mine. Hitler used the big lie as one of his basic methods of propaganda. By deluding people, he achieved his ends. That is not my purpose. Mr. Van Tassel's record will bear out whether he's akin to Mr. Hitler in that respect. Hitler wanted power. He wanted a great deal of power. He wanted followers. Mr. Van Tassel is a candidate for president. I think Mr. Van Tassel wants power. I don't want power. I want to bring the truth to light. Hitler tried to pit one class against another through economic appeal, various appeal. Mr. Van Tassel has been ranting against the military. He's been talking about the 30-hour week. He's been railing against our economy. Those are characteristics of Hitler's tactics, not of mine. I let the listener judge if the methods used by Mr. Van Tassel or myself are akin to that of Hitler. Tonight has been very, very revealing for me. I've heard Mr. Van Tassel make the most ludicrous statements. Any intelligent listener listen to him try to explain angels and angels, and even tell us that the Bible was interpreted by symbols rather than by words, and draw their own conclusion as to that. Those people who want to believe the intelligence-based people are educating our young ones through a comic book can believe that if they wish to. It would seem to me that this could be a much more direct method if you were in contact with any space people. You may believe, Mr. Van Tassel, that there are Deros, people from the bowels of the earth, with fire and brimstone to punish those. I suppose that includes myself. I personally have the greatest doubts. You may believe, Mr. Van Tassel, that Nikola Tesla is still alive and confined somewhere. I have my doubts about that. The sad part of this is that some people have such a strong will to believe that it will completely destroy their common sense. When I appeared in the first program, I thought of this as a matter of fun. Now I've taken it a lot more seriously. I received letters from people that were pitiful in their belief. Letters that, when some light was brought to them, were pitiful in their disillusionment. Things such as what you remarked before about this vaccine and Mr. Van Tassel's absolutely horrifying statement of that it would lead to mental illness and similar diseases are such that, in my opinion, border upon, well, I don't know the word to describe it, I'm on the air, but are most reprehensible and should
and will be brought to the attention of the proper authorities. Unfortunately, Mr. Van Tassel has injected not on the air very much, but through his literature the element of religion. I ask any person who is sincerely and devoutly religious to read his proceedings of the College of Universal Knowledge and see if religion is being used for a purpose which is aimed to benefit Mr. Van Tassel. I am also very fearful of the effect of his works on children. I recall John saying that at the spacecraft convention there were a great number of children there. Children's minds are impressionable. It can do great harm to them. To those persons who border on the neurotic, I'm afraid that belief in this nonsense can really have a devastating effect. I've received telephone calls from people. I'd say a person who told you it's so important that we keep the Darrows down. Now, this may be funny, but what sort of nonsense is this? What effect can it have on a fairly normal mind? The effect can be very, very injurious. Now, I do not think because Mr. Van Tassel is an American citizen that he's immune to criticism. I don't think I'm immune to criticism either. I think he has taken a position which is detrimental to the public welfare, and I congratulate John on his bringing to the public both sides of the subject. I'm just going to say,
you have 1 minute.
I'm not going to take a minute. I'm going to ask every intelligent listener to draw his own conclusion as to who's telling the truth and pass judgment.